Oh yeah, I'm live. All right. Hello, everyone. Right off the bat, thank you to Trexamon for the $3 Australian. Straight hydrated car. Indeed, that's the purpose of this. But yeah, so I was sent this video where it's some sort of a prep. It looks like this angry cops feller is planning to debate Michael Malice on anarcho-capitalism, or like whether the police should be abolished or something. I don't know what the specific point of contention is. Yeah, I watched the first few minutes of it and I was like, oh god, this is not going to go well for this guy. Let's see. Zulu's no longer a YouTuber. He is a React streamer. Well, yeah, I mean, I can get these out a lot faster than the full videos, but the full videos are still coming. But yeah, I thought it would be useful to go over this. It looks like it's this fat electrician, I believe, who is going to be trying to steelman the anarcho-capitalist case. So he's not actually an anarcho-capitalist, which I think that type of debate prep, it can work. You know, if I was debating, like, say, some sort of Marxist, and I was like doing a fake debate. Oh, pardon me. With you know, someone who's really, really knowledgeable on Marxism but isn't themselves a Marxist, then they might be able to steelman the case for Marxism quite well, and that might be helpful. But based on what I've seen, this guy is not particularly well read on anarcho-capitalism, and he's not able to really steelman it. So, in that case, this type of fake debate is just not the type of prep he wants to be doing. Angry cops should really be, you know, listening to lectures, like Mises Institute lectures. He should be reading books. He should, like, I think he might be severely underestimating the anarcho-capitalist case if this is the type of debate prep he is doing. But we shall see. Maybe it gets better towards the end, which I haven't seen yet. Admetos for $5 Australian. Thank you very much. You get a chance to take a look at the 1984 debate yet? If so, what do you think? I haven't looked at that yet. No. I'll probably do it at some point. Capitalist Pig's asking. It's basically, I believe he sent me a debate where it was Leonard Peikoff debating capitalism versus socialism back in 1984, which should be very interesting because Peikoff is very good in philosophy. Yeah, let's get into it. I'll turn on the subtitles.
Just for the record, for those of you that don't, I do not believe 99 or 100% of the shit that's about to come out of my mouth. I'm arguing from the person Rich is going to be debating's perspective, so I'm going to be saying the things that I think that this person would say from an anarcho-capitalist.
Yeah, and that's the key. He's got to be saying the things that he thinks Michael Malice is going to be saying. That really requires quite a deep understanding. 'Cause I mean, I don't know how many debates Malice does. I believe I've seen him debate your own Brook once. But Michael Malice is no chump. He like, I'm pretty sure he knows his stuff quite well. So you've got to do at least enough reading to be able to figure out what sorts of lines of attack Michael Malice is going to be going down. You can't just guess and vibe it out, because unless you really understand the position, you're not going to be able to steelman it properly.
Capitalist perspective.
Wait, David, remove that part.
It doesn't need to be 4K. That's I mean, I'm only streaming on 720p, so 720p. That should get rid of any buffering.
Part that he just said, and now we're good to.
Yeah, apparently Malice has read a lot of Rand. Yeah, I have heard that. That I don't think he calls himself an objectivist, but he is very much a lover of Ayn Rand, so he's going to have probably, I would guess, more philosophical background than Angry Cops is perhaps expecting him to have.
To go.
Just got it. So
this is 100% Nick's belief.
Yeah, 100%
That's all that
belief.
matters. He told me he's very upset with me and he wants to tell me how he really feels.
So an anarcho-capitalist, in response to what you just said, is going to say the market will correct it, and because there's going to.
What did he just say?
So it says
100% part.
think that this person would say from an anarcho-capitalist perspective.
They cut it off.
Okay, David, remove that part that he just said, and now
Yeah.
we're good to go.
Just put it so it
This is
says
100% Nick's belief.
Yeah, 100%
That's
his
all that
beliefs.
matters. He told me he's very upset with me, and he wants to tell me how he really feels.
he's
So
gonna
an
deepfake you.
anarcho-capitalist, in response to what you just said,
Yeah, I assume they just didn't include what he just said because I definitely didn't catch it.
is going to say the market will correct it. And because there's going to be so many private security contractors that are going to be competing to protect you, that prices will be affordable.
I mean, I don't know exactly what he's responding to. It seems like they're going into more of the, well, what would happen if warlords were to take over? I mean, it just strikes me that, again, all these like minarchists and everything, their big nightmare scenario for anarchism is if, well, what if in an anarchist society, a state were to arise? Wouldn't that be terrible? It's like, well, yeah, that would be terrible. Then they're accepting the premise that the state is unjust, so then they've ceded the moral ground, and then the anarcho-capitalists can just run straight through on the moral ground. And I know that Michael Malice loves this argument. He can just say, well, anarchy isn't a location, it's a relationship, right? United States and Canada, they're in an anarchist relationship with each other. These gentlemen on this podcast are in an anarchist relationship with each other. It's all about, respecting private property rights and not aggressing on each other. So I think if they're going purely into the, thinking of anarcho-capitalism like some bureaucratic structure, they're going to run into some problems because Michael Malice can just segue right around that.
And you'll have extra money because you don't have to pay taxes because the government doesn't exist.
What the? So then who takes care of the people that fall through the cracks? Like what?
I mean, who takes care of the people who fall through the cracks? Diddums. If you are in such a situation where you can't afford very cheap insurance, if you can't afford that, okay, and nobody in the world likes you enough to protect you, and you're so like, such a like a scoundrel that nobody can insure you because you're going to get into fights all the time, and nobody likes you at all in the whole world, then yeah, you're gonna fucking fall through the cracks, and who cares that you fell through the cracks? You're an outlaw, right? You're outside of the law. You should go out into the frontiers where you won't be bothering anybody anymore, and work. Try to be productive, and then you can afford protection. Don't be such a scoundrel, and people will want to protect you. And Monhop for $3 Australian. Thank you very much. Who will build lay roads? Indeed. And also, he's talking about, well, people falling through the cracks. Well, is that any different to the current society? People fall through the cracks all the time. Either the state doesn't want to protect them, or the state actively wants to destroy them. Did Ross Ulbricht, did he fall through the cracks? Well, he wasn't exactly falling through the cracks. The state, in fact, just decided, hey, I want to put that guy in a cage forever, for no good reason, right? Ross Ulbricht wasn't committing any crimes. He was running a website where people could freely trade non-aggressive things. He would ban any sort of aggressive thing, like if it was like a hitman service, or like somebody's out there like raping people and trying to monetize that. He banned that all from his market. It was a true agora. And this guy, the state decided, because he's a Bitcoin guy, the state decided to come in and put him in a cage. Did he fall through the cracks of the justice system, which is supposed to protect private property rights? Well, that's the kind of thing that you got to think about here. Is there are natural law defenses here, and ultimately, it all comes down to the ethical argument. So they're going to have to sort of get into the ethical argument at some point, at least to understand it.
Isn't our lower class Americans, doesn't that make up like 60% of the population?
I mean, are we really under the impression that 60% of the population are so destitute and everybody hates them so much that they would be unable to obtain any security, and they're so worthless that they can't even defend themselves? It's like, do I really believe that? And then, if that is the case, why is the solution then to have a monopolist? But how does that fix the problem? Well, then you're just going to have these people where they can just stay being destitute. They can just stay being, scoundrels, and they just get protection anyway. So there is no incentive. Something Hoppe talks about in the private production of defense is that an insurance firm, to really make you insurable as a threat against threats against your property, you have to be civilized. If I'm super uncivil and I'm going around provoking everybody with just how, terrible I am, then I become uninsurable because you can't insure against something that you have control over. So if you have an actual market for this, you tend to get lower time preference. You get decivilizing processes are implemented. But, the state comes in and they just warp all that so people can be scoundrels all they want. And, the state often protects the scoundrels whilst trying to destroy the people who are trying to stop the scoundreliness, right? And so some people, I don't like this term, but some people refer to it as anarcho-tyranny, where basically they're, the upstanding citizens who are trying to defend their property and be productive and everything, they're being persecuted. Meanwhile, the people who are going around destroying things, rioting, they get all the protection in the world, right? This is what happens when you have a monopolist. It completely inverts all of these natural tendencies towards lower time preference.
Sure does.
So how
Again, it sure does. Okay, that's not...
that make up like 60% of the population?
Yeah, I suppose he's just saying sure does to it makes up 60%, but the anarchist can... They have a follow-up from the sure does.
Sure.
This is kind of the problem with having somebody who's not really knowledgeable in anarchism be the steel man here.
Does.
So how is 60% of the population then going to pay for itself to get policing?
Are these 60%? Are these? I mean, maybe I'm overestimating how wealthy Americans are, but are 60% of Americans really so destitute that they couldn't afford like a coffee? Right. I mean, that was how. I mean, let's look at the lodge system, healthcare, where it was on the free market. Before the state got involved, right? It was $2 it would cover you for a whole year of medical expenses. $2 per year. That was the price of the subscription. And that, people can quibble about inflation. At the time, that was about the average day's wage for a laborer. So 1 day of work, and you can be covered for the whole year. Now, why on earth am I supposed to believe that it'd be any different in the industry of security? Why would it be any different? They have to pay for themselves all over the place, right? Is he just making like a welfarist argument where these people are so stupid, so unproductive that they couldn't pay for themselves at all? We need the government to come in, get them clothes, get them food, get them security, get them all these sorts of things. It's like, well, I mean, after a certain point, why is their unproductiveness? Why is that a claim against me? Why is that a claim that the productive people should have to give up their money for it, right? Why is Elon Musk supposed to be attacked and taxed and robbed in favor of the people who didn't produce? It's pure altruism that because you produced something, you therefore aren't owed that thing. You don't deserve that thing. Because you didn't produce something, you are owed that thing. Obviously Michael Malice, he's familiar with objectivism. He'll be able to tear holes through this. This is, I want this guy to start making some of these anti-altruism arguments. Like, hey, you're being an altruist here. You're being a collectivist. This is verboten. Monarcho Hoppian for $8 Australian. Thank you very much. Literally getting someone to be a straw man and got to be a bottom 5 debate prep tactics. Yeah, this is. You would want someone knowledgeable in anarcho-capitalism to prepare here.
Well, because they're not going to have to pay taxes, and because the market is going to be so competitive.
Yeah, see, he's accepting the framing of, well, it is an absolute necessity that we have somebody protecting these anti-productive hordes. That is absolutely necessary. And so here's how we can still work it out, but that's not really how a particularly experienced anarchist debater is going to go about this necessarily. They can just throw out that premise and go, well, why is their need a claim against me? Right? That's communism. It's from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That is the maxim of altruism, and it's the same maxim of communism. So, I mean, are these people going to now endorse communism? This is the kind of tactic that you can do to throw these things back at these people, right? This is another failure of this type of, because a fat electrician doesn't really understand the anarchist case that much, and he's really confident in his own status position. He isn't able to flip it back around and start interrogating the statist position very hard. He's on the constant back foot because he doesn't understand what he's trying to debate for. And he admitted that he doesn't agree with any of it. So, of course, he's not going to be able to figure out all the little nitty-gritty bits of the flow.
That they're going to be able to afford it. Or you can have communities working together to pay for their own police force.
Oh, like how it is now, where
No, not like how it is right now. Because right now, it's the big federal government comes in and says, hey, we're going to provide this level of security to you, or not. They don't even do that. They don't even explain how much security they're going to provide. They're just going to say, hey, give us all your money, and you might get something out of it. Who knows, right? They just take your money, right? If you had anarchism, you know, if this community, you had a bunch of anarchists there, they could voluntarily decide, hey, we're gonna implement these defensive things. And really, again, insurance is a very good candidate for doing this defense on the market. But ultimately, like, the anarchist doesn't even need an explanation. They don't even need to go that far and say how the market will specifically provide defense. They don't even need to do that. In the same way that a capitalist, if some communist was on the breadline and said, hey, well, if you want to abolish these breadlines, how the hell are you going to get food to people? The capitalist doesn't even need to go through the entire complexity, because that's the entire point of how food is produced. Because that's the point of the economic calculation problem from Mises, right? Is that if you have a monopolist, they don't have access to any prices, they can't do any economic calculation, right? So they don't know whether they're being efficient or inefficient. Because the way the market would do it is, hey, this line of production, we're losing money here. So you know that you're being inefficient there. So you know to fix it. But communists, they can't do profit loss calculations. They don't know that they're being inefficient. So it's the same thing. It's a couple communists standing on the breadline. Oh my God, isn't it terrible that we've got to wait hours each day for like moldy, stale bread? Other guy turns to it, it's like, you think this is bad? In capitalist countries, they don't even have bread lines. Right? These people are saying, well, in the capitalist countries, they don't even have state security. It's like, yeah, which is better.
or communities tax one another in order to pay for.
Communities tax one another. The thing is, taxation is completely distinct to voluntary trade. That's the moral point. You really got to hit in on the moral point here.
Goods that they can all get and use together equally.
Correct. Whoa, again, no.
Or goods that they can all get and use together
correct. No, not correct. Not correct.
Equally.
Used together equally. Again, it's this communist language. We all just have equal usage of this thing. It belongs to everybody. Security belongs to everybody. Well, who pays for it? Who pays for that security? You don't want to pay for that, right? If you did, then they could have taxes being voluntary, right? How about this? How about you pay for the security package you want for your own private property, and you don't have to pay for anybody else if you don't want to? How about that?
From the anarcho-capitalist perspective, taxes are bad because they're not voluntary. So it would be a voluntary thing.
So that means nobody's going to pay it. If it's
Why would that mean nobody's going to pay it? Again, it's standing on the brand line. Well, from the capitalist perspective, taxes are bad because it's involuntary, so people should pay for their food. It's like, oh, that means nobody's going to pay for it. Nobody would ever pay for food. Of course they fucking would, because they want to eat, right? People would pay for security because they want to be protected.
it's voluntary, that means nobody's going to pay it.
Why is nobody going to pay it? Are they able to defend all of their own property? Okay, then great. Then they can defend all of their own property. If they think that is a good use of their time, more power to them. All right, this is a division of labor, right? So far more effective for most people to pay somebody else to do these things for them, right? Because that person can be specialized in that activity.
If you
Correct.
said, hey, Rich, voluntarily give the United States government 30% of
Indeed, voluntarily, because the United States government is terrible at protecting your property. They are they're the ones who are aggressing against your property, right? If it's instead, hey, pay this subscription service for this set of insurance. If you want your property protected, then that's what you got to do. That's not a problem. Because somebody ultimately has to pay for this. So it should be the person who wants it done. They should have to pay for it.
your paycheck, I'd say no. And they'd go, well, what would you like to give us? And I'd say none.
Right, but then you're not going to get protection.
And also, this then segues very easily into the moral point. It's like, okay, so you wouldn't ever voluntarily give your government money. Why? What gives them the right then? What gives justify that they have a right to do that? You know, and that puts him in a much more tricky position. Then he's got to have some sort of ethical defense of the state. Good luck, you know.
Oh, geez. Well,
Question. There is 41 million people on Snap. So that's 41 million people. 12% of the total population needing help from the government.
Well, no, again, whether they need it or not, I don't really give a shit, because the need isn't a moral claim. Okay? They need this food, right? How about this? How about they fucking get off their lazy asses and they work and they buy food for themselves? How about that, right? Again, and I really don't think that they need it. It's just the government says, hey, we'll give you a bunch of free food. Of course you're going to say, yeah, sure, I'll take the free food, right?
Government. So that would just go away instantly.
Under anarcho-capitalism, the government would not exist. So correct.
Oh my God. And they think that would just like...
Yeah, wouldn't this be better? Wouldn't this be way better? Right? If you don't have a bunch of, leeches who are sucking from the productive members of society, way better. All right? These leeches they don't have a moral claim against the producers. And ultimately, again, how do you get a taxable asset? Let's look at it this way. How does the government, how is that thing which has been taxed, how did it come about? Well, there are basically three ways, right? It's production, it's homesteading, or trade, right? And trade, ultimately, you're trading things which have either been produced or homesteaded. So those are the two main ones, right? That you go out into nature and you acquire something, homesteading, or you produce something with things you've already acquired. So really a tax means it is punishing the productive for their production. How do we get any of these things like food, which these people are wanting the government to provide? Well, it doesn't come from the grocery store, all right? It's been produced by someone, all right? And you're punishing production. So this is decivilizing, because production means, putting your effort in to create something that has an opportunity cost. You could instead be doing leisure, right? And then you got to save it up, and then the government starts taking away from you to save up. So it reduces the incentive to save, all right? Reduces the incentive to produce, and it reduces the incentive to save. But production and saving, those are specifically long-run, low-time preference activities. So you're bringing people away from civilized conduct towards the state of being just a pure grab at what you can and eat it immediately type of brute, all right? This is not good, and this is why you have so many problems arising from these welfare programs, right? Because you're destroying productivity.
That would be war. Holy shit.
So hold on a second. So we've got, I want to brainstorm this,
Yeah.
right? We've got the Chiquita Banana people. We've got ExxonMobil. We've got McDonald's. They're wealthy. They afford their own policing, right? But they're like not all together. So any country that's already formed and created its own military could just take over the.
Well, this is the kind of strange argument. It's especially strange from an American, because, I mean, the American military, biggest military known to mankind ever, right? Okay, well, therefore it must be able to win every single war. Let's just look over the past little bit of wars that US has had. Well, they were in Afghanistan for, 18 years? Completely failed there. They did not manage to overthrow Afghanistan and implement like a nice US-centric government there. They completely failed. The second they left, it went right back to the Taliban. Okay, so they lost the Afghanistan war. They don't control Iraq. They don't control Iran. They don't control Vietnam. Where is this big victory for the giant bloated military? Where is it? I don't see it anywhere. Rather, imagine if you did have some anarchist region in the United States, like the most well-armed population on planet Earth, who are only going to get more well-armed as there is no longer any sort of ATF there to tell them they're not allowed to be armed. Who is going to be able to take them out? Who has the balls to invade Appalachia in a situation like that? Go ahead, try it. All right. At Metos, even stranger from Second Amendment advocates, indeed. Like, come on, guys. Like, this is back in the day, that was the ideal. That was the idea from the founders of America, that there would just be militias, right? It would be militias, and they would provide the defenses. And then the government decided, well, no, we gotta get this more and more monopolized. And now it's, they're trying to take away the guns from people. If you don't have that, if you have people free to have firearms all they want, and you have all these super well-funded insurance agencies, good luck trying to invade that. I mean, I go over this more fully in my video, Anarcho-Capitalism, responding to the critics, where a whole section going over, like, well, I mean, how would the state go about invading? Why would they invade it, first of all? How would they go about invading? How would they expect to win this conflict? It's really just kind of, well, bigger must mean that they win, but that's not how war is conducted.
Their headquarters and say, you're ours now. Sounds like whoever's the biggest bully.
Yeah, again, this is the problem with having somebody who doesn't understand narco-capitalism. You just go, oh, yeah, I guess they just go into the headquarters, and then there's no problems at all, and they can just say, hey, I've got the biggest gun, so now everybody has to obey me. Like, yeah, good fucking luck with that. Like, fundamentally, the state can only survive. It's a tiny fraction of the population, tiny fraction of the state. It can only survive if the public opinion is in favor of it surviving. Right? If people want there to be a state, then there will be a state. If people don't want there to be a state, there will not be a state. Okay? It doesn't matter how many guns they've got on paper. If tomorrow, nobody supported President Trump anymore. The entire military decided, no, we're not going to support that anymore. And then Trump said, well, we're going to invade China, and we're going to invade blah, blah, blah. He wouldn't be able to do anything. Right? He needs the support of those people who make up the military. Right?
Sounds like whoever's the biggest bully is just going to win.
Yeah, in theory, yes.
No, not in theory, yes. In theory, no. And in reality, no, because theory is theory about reality.
So a lot of anarcho-capitalists believe that there should still... This is where it gets complicated, because some anarcho-capitalists are just retarded, and some of them have kind of thought this through, but they're still retarded. So a lot of anarcho-capitalists are still going to say that there should be a military...
Pause. Zero anarcho-capitalists say that there should still be a military. A state military, that is. Zero of them. None of them. I don't know where he's getting this from. A lot of anarcho-capitalists say there still should be a military. Who? Who the fuck says that? I think you're confusing us with minarchists. They believe that there should be some sort of state military. They believe that, it's so important. This is why we need socialism in this area, because it's so important. It's fundamentally that socialist attitude, where they think, well, because something is so important, that's why you need socialism there. But it's the exact opposite. Because it's so important, you want to get the socialism out there even more urgently.
But there shouldn't be a police force. But let's just stay on the topic of cops, because that's what your debate's going to be about.
Okay, so yeah, the debate's going to be about police specifically. His name's Angry Cop, so I figure that's what he's going to be about.
Yeah, but his thing is that there shouldn't be a police force at all. I did read a little bit that he said that, like, all police are stupid, or...
It's like, okay, let's think back to the olden days, where you have, like, the western frontier in the United States. Did they have anything approaching the police forces that you see in the US today? No, not even close. Not even close. It would be like private militias. It would be, you might have like a town sheriff. That's about the extent of it, right? It's mostly people defending their own property. defending their buddy's property, or maybe they're hired to defend property. It's all that, and they were faced with like constant war and raidings from the Indians, right? And then they were able to deal with it. They were able to, carve out civilization in this zone where you basically didn't have any organized police forces. Certainly nothing like you're getting today. Rich is a cop, and he was a former drill instructor in the U.S. Army. Well, so yeah, there you go. I imagine Malice is going to have a lot of fun with that.
We're all dirty.
This is what anarcho-capitalists believe. They believe that all police are armed thugs.
And it's like, if you get onto a shipping, right, a ship which is doing all of like shipping, right, a logistics company or whatever, do they have a police force on board? No. They just bring guns with them in case they face any piracy, right? They don't have like they can just call up the police. It's like, hey guys, can you get down here in a cruiser? I'm in the Suez Canal right now. Like, it's not gonna fucking work.
A police force at all. I did read a little bit that he said that like all police are stupid, or like we're all dirty.
This is what anarcho-capitalists believe. They believe that all police are armed thugs that work on behalf of the government to violate your rights.
Indeed, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. They are armed thugs that work on behalf of the government to violate your rights. And that is the point of anatomy of the state. Now, the government is just another criminal gang. All right, there's nothing really ontologically different about the state. Right? So then if we're talking about protection, okay, so your solution to people's rights being violated is to have a rights violating protector of rights. Well, that's just a contradiction in terms. That this is again from Hoppe. So your solution is a contradiction. So you're going to deal with this type of thing. In what way, the objectivists will try and sort it out by saying, well, rights only come about because there is a government there. It's like, okay, that's kind of nonsense. He needs some sort of line of reasoning for why, how to get out of this contradiction. If he doesn't, then the whole debate's just over right there.
Except for the fact that the rights are what are voted on by the people. So
okay, well that's not a good tactic to go down. You don't want to go down the democracy tactic. Again, it's like okay, well let's say there are 10 people on a desert island, 9 of them men, 1 of them a woman, and they say, you know what, guys, we're getting kind of rowdy here, we're getting kind of ranchy. How about we have every second day. We each take turns having sex with the only woman here. Let's all vote on it. The woman's like, no, I don't agree with this. Well, sorry, lady. What are you against democracy or something? No, we're gonna have a vote on it. You stop being so selfish. You don't get to dictate policy for everyone. All right, we're all gonna vote on it. All in favor? Aye. Okay, right. Motion passes. All right. Get to the tent, lady. Right. This is democracy is not how you get to rights. Rights do not come from democracy. This is just a nonsense legal positivism. That woman is being specifically raped on the island. She's having her rights violated. All right. This has nothing to do with the vote. The vote doesn't fucking matter. All right. Because let's just think about it reasonably here for a second. What actually constitutes a country? If a country comes about from democracy and that's how your rights come about. Okay. Well, what if there's just like a back alley, right? And there are 2 muggers there and me, and the 2 muggers say, hey, let's vote to secede this region from the U.S. All in favor? Aye. And then, okay, right, now that it's seceded from the U.S., let's vote on taxing that guy's income. All in favor? Aye. Okay, now give us your money. Was that legitimate? Right? Did a new country just pop into existence there? And it's when you start thinking about it in these terms, you understand Murray Rothbard's point that the government is just another gang of criminals. Right? There is no ontological special status for a country. It's kind of it isn't really a valid concept.
The people create their own laws, and then we decide that with the majority, that's the law we're going to enforce.
But from their perspective, they don't believe in democracy or like collective rule. They think,
and again, this is you kind of say, well, from their perspective, they don't really believe in democracy. You got to establish that, all right? What he needs to do now, if he's really steel manning anarcho-capitalism, is say, well, let's take the democracy principle. Okay, then start boom, 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 reductio ad absurdum, reductio ad absurdum. See if you really agree with democracy. Let's really unravel this principle that you've just stated here. All right, and then again, you can destroy his ethical foundation, present your own ethical foundation, and you've won the debate.
Think that if there's 20 people in a room and 19 people want to do something, you shouldn't be allowed to force that other one to do.
Right, and then reductio. I want to see reductio coming from this. Really make it explicit what that means.
The thing.
Well, no wonder they believe in anarchy. They're never going to.
No, okay, no reductio. Well, no wonder they believe in anarchy. They don't believe in democracy. I need to demonstrate why we don't believe in democracy. We don't believe in democracy because it means mob rule. That's what democracy means. We don't agree with mob rule. We're not legal authoritarians. We reject legal authoritarianism.
Have a form of government or do anything other than a dirt road.
Right.
Who will build the roads? Well, the prophecy, it's complete. Who will build the roads? Who could possibly figure out how to build roads without there being a government here? It's not like most roads were already being built long before there was a government around. It's all private contractors who are doing the building of the roads. No, who could figure this out without the government? And it's like, it's also just the point of like, well, roads are often like way oversupplied by the state. They're oversupplied. We don't need that many roads. All right, I'll tell you how many roads you do need. Ask the market. Just leave it to the fucking market, and then you'll get the correct amount of roads. You'll get the correct amount of planes. You get the correct number of trains. You'll get the correct everything. All right, it won't be instant. All right, but you'll start tending towards the equilibrium point. You'll start tending towards the correct supply of transport.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to build shit.
They don't want
because everybody else.
Why wouldn't you be able to build shit? Have private contractors never built anything? When they were looking to build the Empire State Building, does this guy think that they went to the government and said, "Hey, government, we need welfare. We need a specific type of welfare. We need you to design a building and tell us how to build it and give us all the materials"? No, they fucking didn't. They had like an architect designed it. They had a bunch of private contractors got together all the materials. They bought all those materials. It was private industry did it, right? You wouldn't be able to build anything. Counterexample: New York City.
To be stealing your stuff or trying to like.
Everybody else would be trying to steal your stuff. Oh my god, it's so terrible. Wouldn't that be terrible? So what we need to do is we need to have one gang, put them in charge, and give them total authority to steal any of your stuff anytime they want. That'll stop all the stealing of stuff.
Pocket.
Okay,
We have
so
a lot of faith in mankind. A lot of faith in mankind.
I've prepared notes.
Who really has a bunch of faith in mankind, or in like this sort of well, you're thinking too much of humans. They sometimes they're bad. Who really thinks that? Is it the person who wants there to be a sovereign, who has the total authority to dictate what the law is, and he gets to just decide to do anything he wants at any point? Is that having too much faith in mankind to accept this sort of Hobbesian premise, or saying, hey, we don't want there to be a ruler. How about instead we just have voluntary trade here? Who really has the bunch of faith in mankind? I don't know. Monhop for $3 Australian. Thank you very much. Just as I foresaw, Roads, indeed, yeah. It's the same with all of them. Like, this is... If you're doing what about the roads in a spec debate, preparing against a prominent narco-capitalist, and that goes unchallenged, you do not have... your guy does not know enough about anarchism to be able to properly steel man the case.
Here's the arguments that he's going to hit you with. Okay, so
start off with one.
Okay, here's the arguments that this guy thinks Michael Malice is going to hit this guy with. Let's see if these are accurate. Again, I'm not super familiar with Michael Malice. Maybe he will make these arguments. Maybe he's like got them from somewhere. So I suppose I'll just have to evaluate if these are the correct type of arguments to make.
Let's go with
one
Ethan,
argument.
feel free to chirp in here.
He's going to hit you with cops shouldn't exist because they only exist to protect property rights.
No, they only exist to violate property rights. That is their job, is to violate property rights.
And do the government's bidding And the evidence for this is the court case Warren versus DC, where cops technically do not have a duty to protect.
Again, okay, no, the anarchist doesn't need to go, well, what about fucking Warren versus DC? The anarchist doesn't need to fucking say that. They can say, hey, the government is a gang. If Warren versus DC had never occurred, if that case had never happened, anarchism would, and the anarchists would still have arguments for why the police are trying to violate your property rights.
Civilians.
Okay.
Do not have a duty to protect, okay, so yeah, this is the one where it's like, they can just leave you getting like stabbed on a train or whatever. I mean, yeah, it's true. They don't have that duty. But like more fundamentally, again, even if they did have that duty, their job is to violate your property rights. If you don't want to pay any taxes, they're going to get in there, kick it down your door, and put you in a cage. All right, that's their job. Their job is to do that.
Hey, oh my God, there's so many things wrong with that. One, sure, we protect property. We protect.
No, you don't. The job of a police officer is specifically to not protect property. It is to violate property. It is to defend the state in its acquisition of property. That is the job of a police officer.
Everybody's property. We protect your property from getting broken into.
Unless it's the police doing it. Unless you're Duncan Lamp sleeping in your bed. Did the police protect him from getting broken into? No, the police are one of the ones who did the breaking into. And the police are the ones who shot him. All right?
Protect the streets and street lamps.
So again, it's not that they protect everybody's property. And it's again, he's conflating property. He's using property as a package deal because now he's talking about the streets and the street lamps. Are those private streets? Are those private street lamps? No, because he considers government, he's packaging together government property and actual private property. He's packaging these all together. All right? Again, this is a very important distinction to make. And Michael Malice is going to, I imagine, be able to tear through this type of thing. And I really don't think Michael Malice is going to be going for these exact same arguments, but maybe he will.
From being, ripped out by homeless people that want the copper. Your property, your car, it was stolen. Don't you want it back? We've got a lot of shit that can help you get that back. And
what is this like kind of fantasy that these people have that like the police are just like this like super efficient, friendly neighborhood police officers where once you get something stolen from you, the police they're working tirelessly day and night to try and get it back. Like, this is a fantasy. Everybody knows this is a fantasy who's ever had to deal with any level of crime. They know this is a fantasy. The police aren't going to do shit.
We give it back to you. That one court case where it says like we're not allowed to protect people, I could just throw that out because we have use of force training, Article 35, and I believe it's Tennessee versus Garner is the Supreme Court case.
Again, this is kind of the problem with, well, his evidence for that is going to be this court case. Well, no, because he would also think that the police are trying to violate your rights in China as well. They never had that fucking court case. This isn't going to be like his core thesis here. It's like, yes, I've got them now. Like, but before this court case, there was no anarchists, and after suddenly all these anarchists. Like, no, this is a fantasy.
No. The court case that he's citing is the court case that
no, I'm citing a different one.
I know. I'm saying
one in opposition to that.
Okay, go ahead.
In opposition to his, Tennessee versus Garner says I can't shoot a fleeing felon if he's no longer a threat to personnel in the immediate area. So one, I have to protect even the person that's fleeing, which is a felon. And two, I still have to have the safety of the entire community in mind, because if that person is...
You should read their comments on this video. Quite funny, especially the part about the Taco Bell fast food chain war. Sure.
Is a threat to the community, I then have the authority to use lethal force to protect the community from...
Again, like, no, your job is not to protect the community. It's absolutely not that. It's the opposite of that. All right? What if a member of the community doesn't want to pay taxes anymore? What happens?
From this fleeing felon.
Right, but the argument is that you have the authority to do it. You don't have the duty to do it. You don't have the obligation, the legal... Again,
this is not the anarchist argument here. The anarchist, he doesn't fucking get... I mean, yeah, it's bad. Right? It shows yet another situation where the police can be the whole justification that these people are using is that, well, they're going to be protecting you and they don't even have the duty to protect you. That's very illustrative. But this is not the fundamental anarchist argument. It's not that, well, because of fucking Warren versus DC, did you see that court case? Haha, now you're an anarchist, I bet. It's like, no, whether that case happens or not, the anarchist case remains, all right? Because the job of the state, they are just another gang of criminals, and they employ goons called police officers to do their bidding. That is the purpose of a police officer.
Legal obligation to do it. So, like, if you were driving by in your cop car, theoretically, and you saw somebody getting their ass beat, you don't have to stop and save them, legally speaking, is basically what Warren versus DC says. So he's saying that you have no legal obligation to protect people, therefore you only exist to be the strong arm of the government.
So a legal obligation and like a moral obligation.
Again, it's like nonsense. It's not because of Warren versus DC that the police only exist as a strong arm of the government. That's not the reason. This is a terrible steel man.
Are two different things. And I'm sure he'll be like, well, moral obligation is about the sweet. If I drive by a guy getting his ass kicked and somebody goes, hey, look, there's Officer High not doing his job, I'm going to be held accountable by the community, the people, including my department, and I'll probably be fired. So I may not legally be forced to do something. However, I am obligated to do my job, which is protect and serve the community and for.
Again, that's not your job, Mr. Angry Cop. So your job is to violate the rights of people. That is the purpose. That is the entire operating procedures of every single police department in every country that has ever existed. All right, that is the purpose of police officers. Like, you know, they knew this back in the day. There was no illusion that the police were operating on your behalf, right? It was like, no, the police, they're working for the Lord. They're working for the Lord of the land. They're not doing me a favor, right? Nobody, and this is like a sort of newer perception of the police, that they're like, no, they're really trying to help out the community. It's like, no, this is propaganda.
Force New York state law, including City of Buffalo city ordinances.
So I have a question on this one, and it could go either way because it's an honest question. So when we talk about situations like that where you have the legal obligation to intervene, right, as a police officer, isn't there like laws that if you fail to act when you should have acted, that would either end your career or put you in jail? Like I just shot in the dark. Did the Uvalde police officers that failed to act, did they face anything after that?
Yeah, some of them are getting fired. So are the officers.
How many police officers who were at Waco, how many of those lost their jobs? How many of the police officers who shot and killed Duncan Lemp, how many of those lost their jobs? How many of the police officers who every day are enforcing gun control regulations, who are enforcing taxation, who are enforcing immigration restrictions, how many of those cops are losing their jobs? What is this fantasy that, like, oh no, the second a police officer steps right outside of the realm of, they start violating your rights, then they lose their job? It's like, absolutely not. And, I understand why he might think this, because he has an insane theory of rights where, well, the majority said so therefore that's the rights, this is nonsense. This is not, again, this is why it all rests on the ethical case, because we need to know what the rights are before we can evaluate this question of whether the police officer, his job is to violate rights. And, with the natural theory of law, an actual proper theory of rights, libertarian property rights theory, you see that no, the job of the police officer is indeed to violate your rights. They're just like a mafia thug.
Officers that failed to go into the school in Florida that gave us that beautiful skinny retard. What's his name that Cody always calls it clear? The officers that stayed outside that didn't go in there, David Hogg. And also, whatchamacallit, the George Floyd guy. They arrested not only the guy that, quote unquote, killed George Floyd, but also the officers that were around him that prevented him from killing George Floyd.
Okay, so failure to act is at least in
failure
the
to act
law's
is
eyes?
a law in New York State and in other states.
Okay.
We have a duty to act to prevent other officers from violating other people's constitutional rights, including.
And that FBI HRT cop who killed that mother with the kid in her arms at Ruby Ridge had the murder charges dropped, and he was at Waco Siege the next year. Yeah, so again, innumerable examples of the police getting away scot-free because fundamentally they were trying to enforce state edicts there. The people at Waco, the people at Ruby Ridge, I'll go there first. The people at Ruby Ridge, that he had like a sawed-off shotgun or something. The ATF was like, no, you're not allowed to do that. So, let's get out the sniper rifle and start popping this family because they're so dangerous because they've got a gun and they're in the middle of a hunting lodge. It's terrible. And then again later at Waco, they're like, okay, right, we want to really justify our budget here. We want to show the world that we're still good. We're still good after that whole Ruby Ridge disaster. These guys, they've got decommissioned grenades that they're selling as like props. Well, that's terrible. We got to get in there and we got to seal off the entire building. We got to start pumping CS gas in there, which is highly flammable. And that's for good measure, let's throw a couple flares in behind it. Whoa, my God, we burned a bunch of children. How would you look at that? Right? This this is what the state does. They were trying to enforce state edicts. The state edict said that they got to come in there and investigate these guns, right? So of course that's what they're going to do. And Man Sharma for 100 rupees. Thank you very much. If he wishes to do this protection, why couldn't he just do it as a business? Indeed, yeah. Just sell your services. How about that? Prove to the consumer that you are worth your wage.
Including use of force.
Okay.
Basically, he's correct on a legal technicality, but it's
Sure.
not in application of how the real world works.
Yeah.
There are outlier instances, but saying that there's one extreme outlier once in a while, therefore you should.
It's not an extreme outlier. Again, this isn't an extreme outlier. This is the everyday operation of every police department in every town, in every country, on the whole planet Earth for all of time. This is what they do. Their job is to violate property rights. This is not an outlier, okay?
To scrap the whole system is retarded. Like,
Yeah, his argument.
Again, that's not the argument. And yeah, that would be a retarded argument, but that's not the argument.
His argument is you can't triple stamp, double stamp, Lloyd. You can't triple stamp, double stamp. That's his argument.
Yeah. I mean, basically, like a doctor on an airplane has no legal obligation to raise his hand if they ask if there's a doctor on board, but that doesn't mean we should get rid of hospitals.
No, we should. Anarcho-capitalism. They should only exist for people that can pay it. The only
Yeah, they should only exist for people that can pay it. What, are you advocating an NHS now? Does this guy want like a national health service in the US? Maybe he does. Maybe he's that much of a socialist, but he seems more like one of these vaguely conservative type guys.
people that get medical treatment are those that can pay it.
Hey, that's what we got covered right now.
How would charity even begin to exist in an anarcho-capitalist state?
What do you mean? How wouldn't it begin to exist? If people want to give money to someone, that's their goddamn right.
You just have people that would be ripping off the charities. They look at it and say, oh, free money.
You're talking about the...
Oh my god. How would people just rip off these systems? What we really need is to have a big bloated government welfare system. That could never get ripped off. Nobody could ever go for welfare when they don't really need it. Whoa, who could ever foresee that happening?
The hospital and being able to pay for it. It was last week, I think. I found it hilarious. They said that America's healthcare is pay to win, and I'd never heard that before. Great.
That's basically what they want the police force to be.
Yeah.
Pay to win.
I mean, yeah, if you got any money.
Okay, wait. So
yeah, we do want the police force to be that. If you can afford more protection, then you get more protection, right? You can pay for the protection you goddamn want. That's capitalism. That is capitalism. All right. If I want a really, really nice meal, I got to pay for a really, really nice meal. My desire for that meal isn't a moral claim against anybody else. All right. Even if I didn't produce enough to get that meal, well, tough shit. All right. Tough shit. If I want, total armed security surrounding my entire house at all times, 24/7 watch, I gotta go ahead and pay for that. All right.
you have your they want private police, essentially.
Private police forces.
Because that's how you'll get more
Protection.
honest protection.
Not more honest. It's first of all, the first case is that, well, it doesn't violate anybody's rights. Okay. It is a violation of people's rights to have this socialist police force. That's the first case. All right. But then also, beyond that, as economists, we know that it's going to be vastly more efficient because they have economic calculation. All right. How much protection should the state be providing? Without any economic calculation, how much protection should they be providing? Because they could provide any amount of protection. Any service can be either overproduced or underproduced. Okay, well, what if they underproduce it? It might be sort of what we have, out in the countryside or whatever. Where's the debate? Where's Malice? I think it's happening on Sunday. It's just like their preparation for it. But you could also overproduce it. Should they have an armed guard on every corner? Should they have tanks rolling on the street? How much security should the state provide? It's an arbitrary solution they're going to come to. They're just going to arbitrarily provide however much they feel like. And you know what that security is going to be doing? It ain't going to be actually security. It's not going to be protecting rights. It's going to be violating rights. That's the main job of it, right? That's why you have speed traps, so that they can get more, they can get increased funding for their department. That's why they'll just go and say, hey, you got a lot of money there. You might be doing drugs, right? You might be selling drugs. So we're going to take that money, and you have no recourse, right? We're gonna bring the prosecution against the money. That's how it works. That's how these things work when they seize your property in connection with a crime. You aren't getting to defend yourself. The property has to be defended. right? The property is defending itself. In the case, it'll be like the case of the United States versus $5,000 bills. It'll be like, it's retarded shit like that. All right, and then so this government can literally just come in and take your money because they think you might have drug money. So it's ludicrous to think that these people are protecting you.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah, and then the big-
No, not yet.
Right now, it's cops aren't doing a good thing because they're
Because
The
we're
cops
not
morally
beholden to the
bad?
government, but yet he wants private security.
No. It's the cops aren't doing a bad thing because they're not beholden to the government.
Because
The
we're
cops
not
morally
beholden to the
bad?
That is not the reason why the cops are doing bad things. It's because they are beholden to the government. It's because they're operating under the government. That's why they're doing bad things. Okay?
government, but yet he wants private security that's not beholden to the government. I'm confused.
No.
Of course you're confused because you've completely inverted the point.
Oh, you
I'm
are
like,
you
that's
are
why it's like
beholden to the
morally.
government.
Where is it morally? Is it? Does he expect because it's private they're going to be better?
The big thing with anarcho-capitalists is voluntary. That's the thing. They
Wait,
don't.
is it
They don't believe. They don't believe that. Okay, so
How's it voluntary if you won't let me create a government?
Again, this is why you got to be very precise with your language. This is why I never describe myself as a voluntarist or whatever. All right, the fundamental principle isn't that things should be voluntary, because it's like, well, what if I voluntarily want to violate other people's rights? The question is, what actually requires consent, and that is property theory. That's what property theory is based on. All right, you can't. It's not voluntary in the same sense for you to voluntarily violate property rights. Right, you're violating rights. That's not defending your rights. You don't have a right to violate other people's rights. The rights in libertarian theory, they don't contradict each other. They're completely non-contradictory. All right, this is the fundamental point that you're going to have to deal with if you're going to be debating an anarcho-capitalist.
Huh?
How's it voluntary if you won't let a people naturally create a government?
Every person is basically their own government. So like their whole thing is it has to be voluntary. You have to volunteer to pay this money for this protection from this company.
Yeah, but that's never
what
worked in
they
the history of mankind. Every group of people has said,
Bingo.
you look like me.
Because the state's been working out so great. But also, again, just the legion examples. Medieval Iceland, for a period of, a few centuries, they had basically no government at all. You could go for whatever chieftain you wanted in the same area. Right, there was competition over rights enforcement in the same area. You could choose between different chieftains, and they would arbitrate for you. Right. This was how it was done, and it was the period with the lowest murder rate in all of Iceland's history. All right, tiny, very low murder rate. All right, and the only reason that system collapsed was because of the one non-voluntary element, which was that there was not free entry into the chieftaincy profession. Right, that one monopolistic element ended up collapsing the whole system.
Me, let's get together and farm, and then those people across the valley because they're different than us, or they smell, or they keep attacking us because we've got really good shit in our valley.
Exactly. So Michael Malice in particular came from the USSR. His parents were first generation immigrants, sacrificed everything to bring him to America, the land of opportunity. Okay.
Mhm.
He hates communism. You need to keep bringing it back to communism and comparing it to the same.
Again, no, that's not gonna. That tactic isn't gonna work because you guys are the communists. You guys are the ones who think from each according to his ability to each according to his need. And that's your thesis here. The communists, they're just way more honest with it.
Same thing, because you're absolutely correct. Anarcho or any type of anarchism has never worked ever. The real world example, Somalia. Their government.
Do you even think Malice will be capable of holding this argument? I've become less confident in him as of late. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen much from him. I mean, this is very basic stuff. So I'd be incredibly disappointed if Michael Malice lost this upcoming debate. My prediction is that Michael Malice is going to absolutely crush in this debate, based on what I've seen here. If my prediction is wrong, either this gentleman has done a whole lot of reading in the meantime. Maybe he's been studying all week, and he's going to come in with like some really like deep philosophical arguments on Sunday. Either that, or Michael Malice, I don't know, gets a brain tumor tomorrow, and it makes him dumb or something. I don't know.
Anarchism has never worked, ever. The real world example, Somalia. Their government fell in the 1990s. They didn't have a new government for 15 years. You want to know what happened? Exactly what I'm saying. They had privatized security, aka.
And again, this is the point. This is the point, is that the type of society you get depends upon the philosophy held by those people. If the people don't love freedom there, I really don't think the people in Somalia loved freedom. All right, if the people don't love freedom, then yeah, you're gonna have a very much a not free society. If the people love freedom, then you're gonna have a very much free society. This is the fundamental point. It's not just, well, we just press this button to get rid of the state and then suddenly everything's peachy and rainbows. Right? That's not how it works.
Hey, malicious. And then it just became who had the biggest warlord, and that was running shit. And that's the real world application.
It took the Chaz all of 1 week to have a warlord with AKs walking through the streets, accidentally shooting people that they were trying to protect from.
Again, this was a bunch of communists. These were communists trying to start a communist commune. You're trying to attack anarcho-capitalism. Capitalism. Not the same thing. All right?
Themselves. 1 week in Portland, and it couldn't even work out.
You do. This is ISIS, or a power vacuum would be created because there's no government or law. Then who's ever the biggest?
Well, there is law. All right? There is law, because law is natural. We believe in natural law theory. All right? And why is there necessarily a power vacuum? The assumption, they've got to maintain this assumption that, well, there's this power vacuum and it's got to be filled by a state. There is no alternative there. It's okay, well, how about just free markets? How about that?
This warlord is with the most money would take over.
Exactly.
When will Zulu call out Jews? Well, never, because they pay me, right? I'm a member of the Mossad.
And then push everyone out. Now you have to hire that individual. They would set up their own set of rules.
And or extort you, depending on who they are.
Yes, we've watched it happen literally just recently in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's what happened when they were like, oh, hey, we'll get rid of.
Yeah. I like that's the examples they go to. Iraq and Afghanistan, after the US military goes in to try and liberate them, turns out it doesn't work out so well. Maybe the problem might have been this massive state military, biggest military ever, rolling through, demolishing the entire country, and then fucking off. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Whoever has the deepest pockets and the most amount of firearms is going to be the one in control. And then after that, it's just going to, I have all this now. Yeah. Now I'm going to make my own government.
Why isn't it currently the case that whoever has the deepest pockets and the most firearms is in control? Why is the United States government, why aren't they in control of the entire world right now? Because they have the most guns. So they must be in control. They have the most guns, therefore they can instantly win any war. And why don't they have world domination yet? I'm very confused about this, because I've been told by such sources as these that if you've got the biggest guns, then you win. All right? It turns out that war is actually very costly. Even if you've got more resources, you don't necessarily want to be getting into war. And it's in fact only state militaries where they can externalize the costs onto a vast population that they rule over. It's only them who are really able to engage in wars. You don't get this if you're a private firm. You really don't want to go to war.
Where it's an autocracy or whatever, and we got the king of Chiquita Banana or whatever, whichever company started with the biggest pockets.
It's just going to naturally evolve into either an oligarchy, a monarchy, or another archy where it's a single head.
So again, their big nightmare scenario for an anarchist society is that it becomes a statist society. That's their nightmare scenario. Wouldn't that be so terrible? Indeed, it would be so terrible, which means that you concede the moral argument, which means you lose the debate right there. All right, you lose the debate instantly, because the debate is about whether there should be police officers. Again, I don't know the specific point, the specific resolution, but it's about whether there should be police officers. So it's a moral argument. So the instant you concede that moral argument, that the big disaster for anarchy would be if a state forms, then you've instantly ceded the entire argument and you've lost. All right. Man Sharma for another 100 rupees. Thank you very much. Did they pick up a single book in this debate prep, or even try to talk to an ANCAP, or even a vanilla libertarian? Also, glory to Israel. Indeed, it seems like they're very much not well read. I think they're massively underestimating over Michael Malice, and also moreover the anarchist position. I don't think they even understand that this is something they need to read on. They can't just come in here with these basic bitch day one arguments and expect it to work. It's not going to work out. And yes, glory to Israel.
That has the most power.
So that's exactly what's going to happen, and that's what you need to point out, right? So when he's going to argue, here's what he's going to say when you bring this up. He's going to say that the market is going to have to adjust. So like if one security contractor is doing things unjust, the majority of people won't want to do business with them, and then they'll go out of business, and the market will basically...
Again, and this is all predicated on the assumption that you have a freedom-minded populace. Again, Malice, he's no idiot here. He's read plenty of Ayn Rand. If he is even slightly acquainted with Leonard Peikoff's philosophical theory of history, he can start poking away at this and tearing this entire thing to shreds. All right, this is what you've got to contend with here. You've got to, what do you have? An alternative theory of history, or if you're accepting Leonard Peikoff's theory of history, which you really should, then this argument is moot. It doesn't go anywhere. All right, the way that you stop some warlord from taking over is by making people not want there to be warlords. That's the way you do it. If you want to still use this line of argument, okay, maybe you go for an alternative theory of history. You go for maybe a great man theory. Okay, well then you're going to have to defend the great man theory against the very cogent counter arguments levied by people like Leonard Peikoff. You're getting really deep into philosophy here. I think these people, as far as I've seen, they really are not expecting a discussion on philosophy at all. So if Michael Malice is even moderately acquainted with philosophy, which I believe he probably is, they're really going to have a hard time. We've seen this with Dave Smith versus Andrew Wilson. If you have somebody who is knowledgeable in philosophy versus somebody who really isn't knowledgeable in philosophy at all, the person who's knowledgeable in philosophy can just cakewalk the entire thing. It doesn't even matter if the person's right. Like, Dave Smith is correct that libertarianism is better than Christian populism or whatever the resolution was. He's correct about that, but because he doesn't know any philosophy, he just gets fucking cakewalked. You can't even foresee where the conversation is going. You don't even know what the question will lead to. These people, they really do not know what any of the questions that Michael Malice is going to ask. They really don't know where those questions will lead to. Again, if Michael Malice is even moderately acquainted with philosophy, which surely he is, then this debate can very quickly turn into a cakewalk. And Angry Cops really needs to... it's too late now. It's too late to study philosophy now. He really should just start studying philosophy. If he started studying philosophy a few months ago, maybe he'd be prepared for this debate.
Basically course correct the use of force.
That is like a very dumb way of thinking that will happen. Correct. Right? You're like, oh, it'll just course correction. The course correction you're discussing here is hundreds of thousands of lives vanishing because they can't afford to pay anything. Oh, but they don't.
And no, that's not the course correct, because again, the scenario was we're in this freedom-oriented society, and then one agency decides to start committing crimes. Why would the course correction be hundreds of thousands of lives dead? Like, what? Where did that come from?
They don't have a government, so that way they don't have to pay taxes. All right, then what are we using for currency?
Is he really? Do these people not know the history of money? I guess they don't. I don't think they're economists or anything. So maybe they really do think that money comes from the government and food comes from the store. Maybe they really do think these things, but no, that is not where money came from. Money comes from the fact that, okay, well, if you have a barter economy, you need a double coincidence of wants for every given trade. But if I want to, buy a tractor and I've only got carrots, but the guy who's selling the tractor, he doesn't want carrots, he only wants salt, then I got to go find someone who wants salt. And the person who's selling salt, they only want to get beets for it. So I got to trade my carrots for beets, and then the beets for salt, and then the salt for the there's so many extra trades in there. This is so inefficient, and it makes it basically impossible for me to calculate how much I'm spending at each stage, because we've got all these competing monies, right? Which is a contradiction in terms, because money means the universal medium of exchange. So then you tend towards going towards something which has higher tradability. So maybe everybody in the community will accept salt, or they'll accept precious metals like gold. All right, then people start tending to use gold. They start tending to acquire gold specifically for the ability to use it as a medium of exchange, which is how money comes about. That is how gold came about as the money. And I'll tell you what happened to that money. It was the government came in, I believe FDR or Nixon or something like that. I don't know. One of those presidents, right? They came in and said, hey, we're going to take all of the gold and we're going to put it in the Federal Reserve. That's what happened to everybody's gold. All right. We figured it out already. All right. We already figured out what we're going to use for currency. The market does that on its own. All right, this is one of the easiest things for the market to do.
We're the barter system. We don't have a government. So gold, whoever controls the gold mines.
Whoever controls the gold mines. Okay, let's analyze this for a second. All right, we're in a barter economy and we're tending towards a money. All right. So I own all the gold mines. It's like, people are going to want to use gold as currency, so I'm going to keep all the gold for myself and never let anybody use it. Well, then it doesn't fucking become money, does it? Because nobody else gets to use it. It's just still on the ground, and I'm broke. All right. This is retarded. If you own a gold mine, you want to get rid of that gold. You want to sell that gold. All right. That's what you want to fucking do with it.
Like, and guess what? Just like the gold rush in like the teens or like the mid 1800s, you're just gonna have a robber baron just show up and be like, "This is my land." You're like, "No, this is my ow."
That's not. Give specifics here. Give specifics here.
So much for your gold. You're dead. You ain't using it. Wait. That's the biggest thing that I have right now. If there's anarchy, who's creating the currency? What is the currency?
Nobody creates the currency. Again, you don't need someone to create money. Money arises on the market.
Gold, more than likely.
Okay, so then whoever has gold is going to be able to afford shit, and whoever
whoever has money is going to be able to afford it, and whoever doesn't have money won't be able to afford it. And
doesn't have gold
work for money. How about that? Work
is going to be, which is everybody.
He might throw a curveball and say crypto. They also like.
Again. You don't even need this as a curveball. It's like Bitcoin. This is not the curveball response. This is just nothing. There's nothing here. All right. Any economist in the world. Maybe not some of the Marxist ones, but any reasonable economist can tear this to shreds. You don't even need to be an anarchist to tear this to shreds. Roosevelt took all the gold, and then Nixon stopped the direct international convertibility of the US dollar for gold. Oh, there you go. So yeah, it's both kind of. Yeah, that's what happens when you have the government creating the currency. I'll tell you what else you have when the government is creating the currency. All right, you have the boom bust cycle. All right, because if you have fractional reserve banking, the printing off of fiat money, fiduciary media, right? What happens is, the way you get investments is if somebody's saved up money, then they're able to invest that money. Okay, so the interest rate, which is showing you how much there is investing, that is a signal of how much resources, how much capital has been saved. All right. But then if you're printing off this fake money, which isn't actually connected to any saving, it makes it look like there's been more saving than there has actually been. So then you start investing in longer run projects than you otherwise would have, because you think that all this capital has been saved up. And then eventually it becomes clear that, hey, that was the wrong project to invest in. It was a malinvestment. And that's how the boom, that's how the bust occurs. So you get a nice boom when you think there's been way more resources saved than actually have been, and then you necessarily get a bust from that. All right, that's what happens when you have the government creating the currency. All right,
I like to say that.
Oh, sweet! I'll buy one Bitcoin, please, for $100,000. Are you retarded? The rest of us are gonna have to go buy shit coins made by the Paul brothers.
Again, no. Work for a couple of satoshis. All right, work for a living. And it's also you won't get competing currencies like that. You don't get competing monies. That's not how it works at all. All right, because then you're back in the barter situation. To whatever degree you have multiple different media of exchange, you've got partial barter. All right, and this is why the market on its own tends towards a universal medium of exchange. So you're not going to have a bunch of competing currencies. That's not how that works.
Destiny's going to have cuck coin, and I'm going to have to buy a bunch of Destiny's cuck coin. I don't want cuck coin.
Oh.
So, from his worldview,
yeah, Bitcoin is divisible. These people are seemingly like these are basic things. I really don't know. Like, what? Yeah, you need if a single Bitcoin is $100,000, okay, well, don't buy that many Bitcoins. Don't buy a single Bitcoin. Buy less than one Bitcoin. Buy however many satoshis you need for fucking your everyday life. Buy that many.
But what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to hire a security contractor, and then if you have a disagreement, you're supposed to go to an arbitration court to settle it.
So if there's an arbitration court, is there not already some sort of government in place?
Again, this is like, I'm assuming they're using government to mean state, so I'm just going to roll with that. No, because currently there's private arbitration. Currently we have that, right? If you've got some contract dispute, people very often, pretty much every single contract, I've got some contracts up there that I've signed. Every single contract up there that I've signed, it says, hey, in the event of a contract dispute, we're going to this specific arbiter, all right, and we'll sort it out there, because nobody wants to fucking go to the government courts. Nobody willingly goes to government courts.
It's because there's a unified legal system.
No, because it's an arbitration thing. It's like how you can go to an arbitrator for a contract dispute before you go to the court system to officially sue. So it's like an
No, it's not even before you go to the court system to officially sue. It's you go to the arbiter because you want to desperately avoid going to the court system to sue, right? And the entire problem, arbitration would be so much better without the government there, because currently, if I just disagree with how an arbiter ruled, I could say, no, we're going to the government and we'll see if the government overrules it in my favor. So we don't have binding arbitration. We need binding arbitration.
independent business, and you agree beforehand to just like abide by whatever their ruling is. The
Oh,
problem,
good thing that arbitrator probably couldn't be bought by the person with more money to then say, hey, you know what, little guy.
You know what would be a really easy way to buy an arbitrator is if there's a monopoly arbitrator. Not if there's competing arbitrators. That's going to be basically impossible to buy off all the arbitrators. That's going to be basically impossible. But if there's a monopolist arbitrator, well, that's pretty easy to buy off. And you know what we call that profession of buying off the monopoly arbitrator? We call it lobbying, right? It's a very big industry. It's called lobbying, and that's how you buy off the monopoly arbitrator, all right? That's how you do it. It's an above board thing. Everybody's very open about it.
You're
I mean, A, yes, but the other problem is like, cool, what happens if guy A and guy B go to arbitration court and then guy B doesn't like what the outcome was and says, I'm not going to do it anyways?
Bring a gun, all right? Bring a gun and then force him to assent to the verdict, all right? You're back to fighting at that point. Yes, after a point, you're just back to fighting. Great philosophical insight here. This is true of every single system. After a certain point, if some guy's like, no, I'm going to keep your TV and I'm not going to let you have it back. And he's just, everybody's saying, well, no, give it back. He's like, no, I'm going to keep it. And eventually, you're just back to fighting. Eventually, you just got to clock him in the face, break down his door, and take your fucking TV back. Eventually, you just got to do that. All right?
Yeah.
Then what happened?
What's forcing him to do anything?
Exactly.
There's no
guns. Big burly man. That's what forces him to do it. Like, what do you want? Yeah, it's the fucking wizard. It's the wizard again. The wizard, he says, hocus pocus, now nobody can ever violate any rights again. That's what forces him. Is that what you want to hear?
It all
There's
comes
no
down
legal
to
contract that has some sort of repercussion for him not going by his word. Oh, well, people won't like him in the long run, and they won't do business with him. So he'll move to another town.
Or you break down his door and you get what's owed to you. Or that, right?
There's no repercussions.
Yes.
This sounds exactly like California. Let me steal less than $1,000, so then it's not a felony.
Yeah, what if I go to a government court and they tell me that I'm not allowed to have a nuclear reactor in my yard, and I decide I don't agree? Looks like the government can't stop me anymore. Indeed, yeah, it's like this is true of the government courts. Eventually you're back to fighting. You're back to fighting. This is true of the state and of a stateless society.
Because they're not.
Whoa, and what is this analogy he's bringing up here? It's like, well, this is exactly like California, when you have a monopolist protector of rights, right? When you have this monopolist in law, in California, yeah, indeed, people can steal just less than $1,000 and they get off scot-free. How is that describing anarchism? That's describing statism.
Less than $1,000, so then it's not a felony. Because they're not going to convict or charge me or go anywhere further with the legal system when it comes to repercussions, because it's below $1,000 and no.
Yeah, because they're monopolists, and the shops aren't allowed to stop them. They're not allowed to bring out a gun and say, "Hey, if you try and leave the store with that merchandise, I'm going to shoot you in the face." The stores aren't allowed to do that. You know why they're not allowed to do that? Because there's a monopolist, right? There's a monopoly on the use of force, so the stores aren't allowed to bring out their guns and shoot these people in the face. And that's the problem.
No longer a felony. How's that working out for Rite Aid? They're out of business. Rite Aid's out of business.
But Rite Aid could afford to buy a personal security squad.
Oh,
Under his
geez.
system.
You're right. And didn't they? Don't they have cameras? Don't they have security?
They're not allowed to do anything. They're completely nullified. The security is neutered.
They would have armed guards.
Oh, okay. So then people would be getting shot over hostesses.
This.
Yes, great, yes. Ideally, they just wouldn't steal in the first place. But if they really see this guy who's holding a shotgun to their face and saying, "Hey, buddy, if you take another step, I'm going to shoot you in the mouth," and they go, well, I don't care, and then they step forward again and they get shot in the mouth. Okay, well, eventually Darwin just kicks in. All right, Darwin just kicks in, and really, I don't see why I should feel upset about that. These people are brutes. They're trying to steal from people. They're trying to destroy civilization. All right. After a point, you know, you gotta just deal with it through fighting.
This is exactly what you need to hit on.
Yeah.
Because
So we're going to shoot people over.
That's what you need to hit on. Like that's not gonna be great for you if you try and hit on this.
We're stealing a hostess.
Who regulates your version of Blackwater?
Yeah.
Who determines the standards of force? Who determines what's right?
Again, it's just this positivism, just total legal positivism throughout. Nobody is determining these things. It's like this Randian argument of, well, we need someone there to make the law objective and to determine what the correct standards of evidence are. It's like, no. Epistemology tells you what the correct standards of evidence are. Legal theory, jurisprudence tells you what the correct standards of force are, right? That it's philosophy, okay?
Right and what's wrong at a uniform level across the board.
Who determines what's right and wrong? Who is the final authority in ethics? Let's ask Miss Ayn Rand. Nobody is the final authority in ethics, okay? There is no authority in ethics.
Jimmy wanted to return his Amazon product and got shot point blank in the face because there are no returns at Amazon.
Correct. And then you need to hammer him because he's really big on rights. He thinks that anything a cop does is violating your rights. So you need to hammer on him that he has no authority to establish what a right is because...
Again, this is, we reject legal authoritarianism. Establish what a right is. You need an authority to establish what... No. You can just reject the legal authoritarianism. And then, whoops, do these guys have a method to navigate around the situation of him rejecting legal authoritarianism? Do they have a method to do that? I really don't think so.
Because there's no government. Who's granting you these rights?
There's no government. It doesn't.
Nobody grants you rights. This is the point. Your rights aren't granted. The German government didn't grant the Jews the rights to live and then retract this grant, and then so it wasn't murder anymore. I believe 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. How many does angry cops think were murdered? Well, if he's being consistent, he thinks that 0 Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Because it's not murder if the German government says they don't have any rights. Whoops.
Doesn't mean anything. I can do what I want.
I would say a counter. I would say a counter to that potentially could be that, like the Bill of Rights in the Constitution, while it isn't written, those are considered inalienable and given to you by God, and not necessarily.
I'll say also the point of the Constitution here. If we, let's just check out the 9th Amendment. Amendment. U.S. Constitution. Yeah, if I can hate all these bits. Give me the text. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage to deny or disparage others retained by the people. That is saying, hey, natural law theory is correct. That's what the 9th Amendment says. Is that, hey, we are just enumerating the rights that there are. We are not granting you these rights. These rights are not coming from the Constitution. That's what the Constitution says. All right? So you can't appeal to the Constitution as, well, this is where your rights come from. You really gotta have to, because that's the argument he was making before, where it's like, well, we live in like the republic, we live in a constitutional republic, and it comes from the people, and we the people. No, the Constitution disagrees with you there. The Constitution says your rights are natural.
A government, so he might fire that at
you. What do I think becomes money, gold or Bitcoin? Bitcoin is probably on the best track to become money at this point. I do agree with the commodity theory of money, that in a totally free market, in the unhampered market, it would have to be some sort of commodity like gold, and if the state never got involved, then gold just probably would still be money. But we don't live in an unhampered market. We live in a very heavily hampered market. Which is why Bitcoin is got a great candidate to become money, because it's basically impossible for the government to get in the way with it. And it's kind of there's a silver lining there, which is that Bitcoin is actually a better money than gold, because gold is just very hard money. It's very hard to get more gold, but it's actually impossible to get more Bitcoin after that 20 million mark. Only one of these wise men picked up a book by Hoppe. Indeed, like there's really insufficient debate prep.
Sweet.
Yes, but rights without enforcement are nothing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Listen, God gave everybody the right to free speech, but our government is the only one that has it written that they have to protect it. God gave the Chinamans the free speech, but guess what?
Okay, so then he is accepting natural law theory, so he's rejecting his earlier statements that your rights come from democracy or whatever. Okay, but then what is your theory of rights? What is your rights theory? Again, Malice can very easily just start interrogating this. What is your theory of rights?
what their government is doing, not, killing Uyghurs and doing
Well, I mean, yeah,
stuff.
no, you could absolutely. I was just thinking about this. You could go down that rabbit hole. So let's say, Rich is in charge of company B. I'm company A. Rich says something that is offensive to me. And
Okay, any type of scenario you see where somebody's trying to come up with a reduction for anarcho-capitalism and say, well, you're in company A, I'm company B, just replace company, just literally do a search and replace for the word company with the word state, and it instantly becomes a reduction against them as well. Like, so it's on even footing.
and I say, he's hurting my business. Now my personal security is going to go and take him out because he's
Just replace it with Canada and the US.
violating my rights.
Exactly.
There's no rules. It's just going to be who's got the bigger gun, the more guys.
Between Canada and the US, who's got the bigger gun? It's just going to be, well, the US now owns Canada, and Canada has to get Trump's permission before they enact any laws, because they got the bigger guns.
The more money. And then eventually, like I said, it'll become either an oligarchy where there's like 3 or 4 businesses that run shit, and then they make you pay, like, what's it, that song? Sold My Soul to the Company Store, which instead of giving you cash for something, they just give you tokens to use at their business. Like, we've already kind of lived through a lot of this bullshit that he's trying to describe, and it does not end up well.
Correct.
Now, capitalism with restrictions.
Again, this is kind of like the myth of the progressive era, right? That the capitalists were running rampant, and they just needed the heavy hand of the government to step in and fix it all. Actually, no. Basically every single major economic malady that you see in the United States today is that you can thank the progressive era right for that. All right, it was because of the progressive era. All right, it was these big government types got in there and they enacted all of these regulations. That's why you don't have any gold anymore. All right, that's why there's all these regulations. That's why the military industrial complex is so giant. It's all thanks to the progressive era. The progressive era gave the government all these powers to do all these things. All right, that's why. It wasn't the capitalists who were running rampant and doing all these problems. It was the government.
Restrictions works, right? You can't have a monopoly, which is definitely what's going to happen in anarcho-capitalism.
So the solution to having monopolies is we need a monopoly.
You're going to have a monopoly. Like, there's going to be one, there's going to be Ford and Chevy, and it'll be the truck wars. And
Why would it be the truck wars? Why would it only be Ford and Chevy? Because there wouldn't be any patents anymore. So why would Ford and Chevy take over? Again, this is the myth of the natural monopoly. Oops, daisies. Tom DiLorenzo, right? The myth of natural monopoly. Again, this is just a complete farce. It's ahistorical. It's aeconomical. It's nonsense. Man Sharma for another 100 rupees. Thank you very much. What do you think about the argument that Bitcoin has no objective value as opposed to gold and is thus digital fiat? And what about other crypto? I mean, really, in economic terms, there isn't any like intrinsic value to concern yourself with. It just depends on whether people want it. Does it have exchange value? Clearly, Bitcoin does have exchange value because people are exchanging all the time. People make trades with Bitcoin. So if you're looking for an economic theory which has some sort of like intrinsic value in things, I mean, it clearly just doesn't describe reality. The US didn't even have a federal income tax until 1913. I would say the Civil War, indeed. Yeah, like all of these horrible things that the government does. Apparently Peter Schiff is a banned word. Weird. Pardon me.
Mississippi will split who drives a Ford and who drives the golden bow tie.
He literally wants to replace government policing with mercenaries on your own payroll. That's it.
You know who else wanted to do that? You may have heard of them. They're called the Founding Fathers of the United States of America. They wanted private militias to provide the security. That's what they wanted. That was their idea. Right? Well, so crazy. We're 3 constitutionalists. Founding Fathers, so crazy. Like, well, come on, man.
It's essentially his stance.
Jesus Christ.
They're not going to be, like, none of those police are going to be held accountable for anything. They're literally just going to go shoot people, and they're going to be like, well,
yeah, and they may say, well, they had a bunch of children in that compound, so that's why we pumped it full of a bunch of flammable gas and sent in incendiary grenades. They won't be held accountable. And under anarchy, they won't be held accountable.
why'd you do that? Like, well, I didn't like him. Well, that's Jeremy. He didn't do anything wrong. You made a mistake. He's going to be like, oh, well, whatever. Talk to Barnes & Noble. They own me, and they're not going to give a f- what you say.
Bingo.
And then plus, when they own a monopoly, they can just inflate the prices of shit. And now guess what? All that extra tax money that people are saving, they can't afford anything. They can't afford to live. But guess what? It's not a right because there's no government to enforce it. So now you can starve people. Welcome back to the USSR.
You know who actually has a monopoly who can just raise the prices arbitrarily? They're called the government. They can just arbitrarily say, nope, taxes are going up this year. Nope, taxes are going down this year. Taxes are going up this year. Taxes are... That's who gets to arbitrarily set prices. It's the fucking actual monopoly called the government.
You're just creating gangs with an extra step.
It's mafia.
It's
It's literally
It's just mafia rule. It's just the cartels.
also a great example to bring up.
The
When he talks
cartels.
about private security and protection, mafia, cartels.
Again, cartelization doesn't exist on the market. You don't get cartels on the market. You know why? Let's say we have a cartel on producing tires, right? Rubber tires. Well, if I'm really, really good at producing tires, I've got to like either raise my prices or lower my production or do something so that I'm not out competing the less efficient members of the cartel. That's what it means to be in a cartel, right? So that we can have these higher prices, that I'm not undercutting anybody. Well, why the hell should I do that, right? Why does it benefit me to be in the cartel? I can just leave the cartel and make more money and compete all these guys. The cartels are not stable on the market. That's why. I'll tell you when they are stable is if the government comes in and says, hey, there is now a monopoly grant over taxi services. You've got to get the government permission if you want to start a taxi service. Then suddenly, well, we can form cartels. Like, it doesn't make sense to leave the cartel anymore. Bad Apathy on Twitch. I wanted to ask about private law in a case where someone isn't part of a private law network and is accused of a crime, but there isn't enough proof to justify a search. Why would a private security firm not just search anyone because they have paying customers that want it? I mean, ultimately, like, the fundamental point is that you want to have, for there to be a properly free society, the people there must desire freedom. And if the people there desire freedom, they're not going to desire, people arbitrarily breaking into each other's homes to search for evidence, right? They're gonna advocate an actual rights respecting procedures for gaining information, right?
Yeah, I would hammer him on rights don't exist without force. There's no uniform.
Oh, they mean cartels like drugs. Okay, I'll tell you where they came about. It was thanks to the drug war. You know who did that? I think it was Chevy started the drug war, wasn't it? Yeah, it was private industry started the drug war.
In fact, there's no uniformity to it.
Yeah.
Because now the entire country and human rights are regulated by company policy, which the people have no input in other than by not giving your business to that contractor.
Which, by the way, with whatever they deem is the currency that they can use.
Right.
Oh, it's gold. Oh, sweet. The shit that nobody has because Nixon took it all away.
Yeah, the real problem with anarchy is because Nixon takes away all the gold. That's the real problem with anarchy. Ludicrous.
Thanks. Great.
FDR.
What? Oh, did FDR do that? Really?
Yes.
All right, well, that was very much not impressive. We could watch the I'm gonna be streaming that long. We could watch the Michael Malice versus Jeroen Broek debate as well, because we got one side. We got the prep. We can see if this prep will be kind of sufficient. Yeah. Oh yeah, give it a dislike. Why not? Yeah, this one. I'm gonna go. We'll do a quick intermission because I need to go get more water. Whoops, that's that's the wrong scene. Scene BRB. There we go. We got some more donations.
Huh?
Pardon me. Let's see here. From Denny Cat for $5 Australian. Thank you very much. Bob Murphy has an article called "Should We Love or Loathe the Mafia?" It explains why the mafia exists because of statism, not the market. Read it. Yeah, I'll give that a check. Japanese salarywoman or Sydney Sweeney? Well, I think the Japanese woman looks very nice. Then Indonesian defense for €1. Thank you very much. All right.
It regulates the relation.
My God.
So let's put this on the table. Speaking of naive, I still, more than the two of you by far, I think, have faith that government can work. Okay, let's put that on the table.
Wait, I got it. I'm not trying to be pedantic. What do you mean work? Government can achieve goals. That is not in dispute.
Can achieve goals effectively to build a better world,
Okay.
a functioning society.
So I'm going to take it one step further than you.
Oh boy.
The only way to achieve a better world is through government.
Michael, what do you think about that?
He almost dropped, and I said it on purpose that way.
No, I'm glad the mask is dropping.
You cannot have liberty or freedom without a government. Now,
I mean, yeah, we've gone over plenty of your own Brooks arguments by this point. No, because again, it's a rights violating protector of rights. It's a contradiction in terms, and like this idea that, well, there is no such thing as liberty or freedom. Those only come about from the government. It comes from this idea that you need a government to make the law objective. But that's nonsense. The law is law, right? It's natural. Your rights already exist, whether there's a government there to recognize them, or indeed abrogate those rights, right? It's this socialist nonsense, this positivist nonsense.
not anything like the governments we have today. So I think the idea that you can have liberty or freedom without government is the rejection of the idea of liberty and freedom. And the undermining of any effort, any attempt to do it. So in that sense, I agree with you.
Right here, right?
Like, I know, exactly. On this side, we can agree with Lex.
Yeah.
Which is unusual.
That government is good for
You're
freedom.
agreeing with the guy who's reading my Kampf. That's not a surprise.
Who's dressed in black.
Yeah.
That's the bad guys.
No, the fascism, the road to fascism is anarchy. It's not.
What the hell are you talking about?
The road to fascism is anarchy. Yeah, I mean, they're a real anarchist back in Italy. They're real anarchists, and that's how Mussolini took over, because they were just so anarchist. They just loved freedom so much. They're all reading like Murray Rothbard, and then they're like, you know what we need to implement this? We need Mussolini. Like, what are you talking about?
Anarchy.
It's more like this. It's it's just the philosophical theory of history. If the philosophy today is an anarchist one, it's a freedom oriented one, you don't get the fascist government. It's impossible for it to form unless people want it to form. Fascism is the road to fascism. Legal authoritarianism is the road to fascism. Anarchism is a rejection of legal authoritarianism. You need that philosophy in order to avoid fascism.
Exactly when anarchy led to fascism.
Well, every example of a stateless society leads to authoritarianism. Every single one in all of you.
Every single example of a stateless society leads to authoritarianism. Again, Iceland. What was the factor in Iceland which led to the later more authoritarian government? What led to that? Well, it wasn't the fact that there was competition in rights enforcement. It was specifically the non-competitive aspect, which was that there wasn't free entry into the chieftaincy profession. Again, Roderick Long goes over this. I regard Roderick Long's article. Long, what would it be? Iceland. The decline and fall of private law in Iceland. Yeah, this is very clear that it was specifically the part where it wasn't the case that anybody could be a Gothi, anybody could be a chieftain. That was specifically the part which caused the freedom to fall. So no, it wasn't the anarchistic aspect. It was the non-anarchist aspect. Of course, the statist aspect leads to more statism. Duh.
Of human history.
Well,
It has to because
Wait, you're
because
saying Weimar Germany was anarchy?
Well, it wasn't pure anarchy, but it got close. But no, I said the reverse, by the way. I said the reverse. I didn't say that every form of authoritarianism started with anarchy. I said that every situation in which human beings lived under anarchy led to authoritarianism. So I said the flip.
Anarchism isn't a location. Anarchism is a relationship.
Again, this is Michael Malice's famous line. I really don't think that Mr. Angry Cops is going to be able to deal with this very well.
Three of us are in an anarchist relationship. Every country is in a relationship of anarchy toward each other. The US and Canada have an anarchist relationship toward one another.
And he's literally taking the Hobbesian view of humans all being savages when he says this, which falls apart because who is the government made up of? People. Indeed, yeah, it's the Hobbesian myth, and it's also just, it's so anti-objectivist to say that men are just naturally brutish. They just want to dominate everybody else. Like, no, Galt's Gulch, they weren't all brutes who were like snarling, just waiting to tear each other apart. But then Judge Narragansett, he kept them at bay. I think that's a myth.
And to claim, you know, going back to Emma Goldman, who I love, in 1901, William McKinley, President McKinley, was shot by this guy, Leon Salgas. And it was very funny because he was a crazy person. And they arrested him. He shot the president. And they go, why did you shoot President McKinley? And he just goes, I was radicalized by Emma Goldman. And she's like, oh, God damn it. So now she's on the lam. She had nothing to do with this guy. She's trying to flee. She gets arrested. They caught her. And she said, and this is the hubris of this woman, which I admire as the subject of ego hubris. She goes, I'd like to thank the cops for doing what they're doing. They're turning far more people into anarchism than I could do on my own. So given everything you've said in these 2 hours, and then to pivot to being anti-government is being anti-liberty, I don't feel I have to say anything.
Well, okay. For people who are not familiar, if you're, I don't know why you would not be familiar, but Michael Malice talks quite a bit about the evils of the state and government, and espouses ideas that anarchism is actually, what is it, the most moral system, the most effective system for human relationships.
There's this great book called Atlas Shrugged, and the author posits an anarchist private.
Indeed, Galt's Gulch is Ancapistan.
Society. She calls it Galt's Gulch, where everything is privately owned and no one is in a position of authority over anyone else other than the landowner. That's an anarchist society.
There's one judge and one authority.
Yeah, and that's what everyone. Hold on, and that's what everyone has voluntarily moved there and agreed to be under.
It's a very small community, right?
Sure, that is right. So I have no problem with competing governments.
That's the definition of anarchism.
What's that?
That's the definition of anarchism. Case closed. Okay, end the show. End the show. I got him over.
Not definition of anarchy at all. I'm all for competing governments.
Good job. He did it. Yeah, Ron. Brought him over.
I'm Lithuanian.
What is it?
I was Lithuanian. That's my people.
Tulski, Yasnaya Polyana, Myodom, honey. No claims of health.
The other one claimed health. This one claimed. No, I'm for competing governments on different geographic areas. That's fine.
Why does it have to be over? Okay, let me ask.
It's really crucial that it's on different. So you don't have two judges in Galt's Gulch. You have one.
This is an interesting thing. You don't have two judges in Galt's Gulch. You only have one. Okay. Does there have to be only one judge in the United States of America? Like in his ideal capitalist version of the US, would there only be one judge? Like.
And there's a reason one. There's one authority. There's one system of laws in Galt's Gulch.
One authority, again, he's, you know, on one hand, your own Brick will be like, well, authority is the enemy of mankind. And he says, well, we need one judge, one authority for there to be capitalism.
Gulch. That all the people under the Gulch abide by. There's one.
There's two, because they're in America.
No,
so
they're not. The whole point is they're not, right?
They're not
so
America, they're Colorado.
I know, but the whole point of the novel is they've left America.
They haven't left America.
They've hid themselves, so they're not under the authority of the America.
But they are. Don't you get it?
But they're hidden. They're supposed to be.
The whole point is that they're hidden, so they're not under the.
No. If the three of us hide, we're still under the authority of Washington.
No, but not if they don't know.
This is why they haven't established a state, and it's not a government, and it's not in that sense. You know.
Whoa! They haven't established a state. They haven't established a government. But your own Brick just before was saying how you need the state, you need the government before you can have freedom. So was there no freedom in Galt's Gulch? Because they haven't established a government. Whoops. Like, I think he hasn't properly thought through this Galt's Gulch example very well.
An example of really the way we form societies. It is a private club that is hidden away from everybody else.
Fine. I'm fine with that. What happens if an American kills a Canadian in Mexico?
What happens in American, it depends on the nature of the governments of the three places, right? But usually what happens in most of human history is that America will launch a war either against Mexico or Canada.
No. So you think the usual case of an American killing a Canadian in Mexico would be that the American government launches a war against Mexico? He thinks that's the ordinary situation. No, that is a fantasy. That's not true.
Canada.
Okay, just first of all,
so usually violence results in much more violence. Anarchy is just a system that legalizes violence. That's all it does. In international affairs, that's the reality.
Again, your own Brick wants legal violence. This is the slippery nature of using violence instead of aggression. Your own Brick wants legitimized violence. He wants legitimized coercion. He wants legalized violence. But he wants the government to do it. He also wants violence.
The reality is that the way you resolve disputes that are major disputes is through violence.
Ayn Rand said, the definition of a government is an agency that has a monopoly of force in a geographical area. Right. So you can't complain that anarchism is legalizing violence when the definition of government, according to Rand, is legalized violence.
Well, there you go. Again, so this is looking very promising for Michael Malice's performance because he's hitting all these points very well. He's very sharp here, and I think Mr. Angry Cops has really underestimated Michael Malice. If Michael Malice is performing half as well as he's performing here, he can very easily crush Angry Cops. He could probably show up like after a gummy or something, right? He could show up with a Rectenwald strategy for debates, and he would be able to win.
No, but because you're taking the definition of violence the way she defines it, right? In this context, she talks about retaliatory force only. And
Has that ever happened?
that's not the point.
That is the point.
Before there was Aristotle, was in Aristotle. Before there was in America, was in America. The fact that something has never existed means that it will never exist before. The fact that the ideas haven't been developed to make something exist means that it will never exist before. We're young. Human race is a young race. The ideas of freedom are very young. The ideas of the Enlightenment are just 250 years old. The idea that you can create the kind of government I talk about, that it's never been before means it'll never happen again. That's a silly argument.
It's not a silly argument. It's you're being a Platonist. And
No, not at all.
I'll explain to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If somebody's dropping fucking you're being a Platonist in a debate on anarchism, if somebody brings up, hey, you're being a fucking Platonist right now, Angry Cops is vastly underestimated what he's about to get into. If somebody's dropping fucking you're being a Platonist, they know philosophy, okay? This is not a debate over the theory of concepts they're having right now. This is a theory over anarchism versus statism. And he's name dropping Plato. Like, good fucking luck, Angry Cops. Clearly Michael Malice understands philosophy. He understands how to connect the broader philosophy to the specific case of the legal theory. Angry Cops is in dire straits, just based on that. Man Sharma for 100 rupees. Thank you very much. Liquid Zulu, the judge of mankind. Holy Roman Emperor over the 1,000 Liechtensteins. Give her rights and shield and sword of objective law. Yeah, I mean, well, we need someone to make the law objective, so that's kind of what I was doing with my course. It wasn't objective before, but then I had to make it objective, so I had to state it. I really need to state it in a big document, get a John Hancock on the bottom, and then it'll really be objective. You need John Hancock to sign off on it, and then it becomes objective. Add Metos for $5 trillion. Thank you very much. How many Aussie brethren in this stream right now? I'm definitely seeing a fair few. I think they're enjoying the earlier streams. It's much easier to get in on, I think.
See how you're being exactly a Platonist.
So if I was sitting in 1750 arguing with Thomas Jefferson, he was telling me what kind of state he was going to create, and I said, "Has a state like this ever been created?" And he said, "No." Was I being a Platonist? Of course not.
No, you're being a Platonist. You're being a Platonist now. Here's why you're being a Platonist now. Because one of the things that Aristotle believed in, one of the things that Ayn Rand in other contexts believed in, the cover of her book, The Philosophy Who Needs It, is, I think it's the Sistine Chapel, the cover, or wherever it is. It's Aristotle and Plato walking.
No, it's not. Yeah, but
what's that painting? I forget what it is.
It's a School of Athens.
School of Athens. Thank you.
It's
so Plato's pointing toward the heavens while they're talking.
Again. He's bringing out fucking philosophy. Who needs it? He's read the philosophy. Talking about the fucking School of Athens. We're talking up to the heavens or to the earth, right? It's the two competing schools in philosophy. It is arguing, I mean, this world, you're otherworldly. And he's saying that your own book statism is otherworldly, rationalistic, trying to like deduce like the perfect government or whatever. If he's bringing that up, good fucking luck, Angry Cops. You're going to need it.
And Aristotle's pointing to the earth.
Reality. Absolutely.
So if you want, there's two approaches. There's the Descartes Cartesian approach, which is I sit in my armchair and I deduce all of reality. Or if I want to study the nature of man, if I want to study the nature of dogs, if I want to study the nature of the sun, I have to look around. I have to open my eyes. I have to look at data. It's very difficult. When Rand was on Donahue, he asked her about, aren't you impressed with the order in the universe? And she goes, oh, now you have to give me a moment. And the point she made, which was very hard for many people to grasp, it's hard for me to grasp, is one's concept of order comes from the universe. You can't.
Doge became a channel member. Thank you very much.
Can't have a disorderly universe because order means describing that which exists and which has existed. Sure. Now, if you are looking at governments throughout history that have always existed, and when you were on Lex, you said, what I'm talking about has never existed.
Right. To
say that that has a possibility of working in reality, I think is certainly not a point in that favor, number one. And number two, Jefferson was a fraud.
And again, Michael Malice can make this type of argument because he's very clear. Anarchism is a relationship. So anarchism has existed. It exists in this room that they're having this podcast within. So Jeroen's got a big hurdle to try and cover here. It's, does your perfect society, is it a floating abstraction or does it actually exist, right?
Jefferson argued how America would look did not come true. Jefferson's concerns about the Constitution were accurate. And the fact is the federal government did become centralized, did become a civil war. So if you told Mr. Jefferson, our government you're positing can't work, you would have been correct.
That's not what I'm saying. It's not the issue of can it work or not. It's the issue of can something exist that hasn't existed in the past. It's a silly argument. Now, we can argue about the facts of reality, whether such a thing can exist. But to say it hasn't existed in the past is not an argument about whether it can exist in the future. But that's the argument you made.
No, you're talking about history and now you're dancing around it.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm saying that something different happened in the founding.
Well, he was actually. I think Michael Malice is correct here. Because Jeroen Brick was all about, well, every time it's been tried in history, anarchism leads to authoritarianism. But now Malice is like, well, you want to talk history? Let's talk about the history of your system.
of America. It might not have been perfect, might not have been ideal, it might have been, some people even think it was bad, right? Something different happened. And you could have sat 20 years before and said, well, that's never happened before, so it can't happen in the future. That is a bad argument. It's not a good argument. Irrelevant.
No, but you're making the argument that just because something hasn't happened before, that's certainly not a point to say it's likely to happen or possible.
No, I'm saying, first of all, I agree that everything we know about what's possible or what's not possible has to be from reality. That we agree completely. I think anarchists completely evade that point. I think you guys live in a world of mythology, of abstraction, of Descartes, to imagine the kind of anarchy that David Friedman or Rothbard described. It's complete fiction, and it's complete mysticism.
Okay, let me ask you just a few dumb questions. So first of all, what do we do with violence in terms of just natural emergence of violence in human societies?
Sure.
So the idea that anarchism proposes is that we would, as the community grows, there may be violence, and then we together form collectives that sort of fund mechanisms that resist that violence. I mean, I'd love to sort of talk about violence because that seems to be the core thing. That's the difference between the state that was definitionally, I guess.
Again, I think violence is the incorrect way to talk about this. I think it's the incorrect way to phrase the question, because everybody is for violence, right? The state is for violence. The anarchists are for violence. It's about when are you for violence? What types of violence are you for? How do you think it's best to organize that violence? The statists, they want there to be a monopoly on violence, right? And and this monopoly on violence also gets to dictate when the violence is okay or not, because they're the ones making the law objective, right? This is a deep hole for your own, and you don't really get to that by just talking about violence.
This is the thing that has a monopoly on violence, or controls violence in such a way that you don't have to worry about it. And then the anarchism, I don't know. I'm using bad words.
No, your definition is accurate, but the point is that the definition of the state versus how states act in reality is just absurd. Yeah.
So, and then the idea that anarchism will be is that it's more kind of a market of defenses against violence. So you have like security companies, and then you hire different ones that
you
are more competent.
You have things being made affordable. You have more accessibility to security. You have accountability when people misuse their power, and you have
again. So he's hitting the economic arguments as well. The angry cops. Good luck, Brody. Like Michael Malice is he's easily segueing between the philosophy, the ethics, right on to the economic point and the historical point. It ain't gonna work out for angry cops. I think my prediction is gaining steam with every second we watch of this.
Have more layers of security than having a government monopoly. But so objectivists understand, and they don't deny this is something they talk about constantly, is anytime you have a government monopoly, it's going to have enormous distortions as a consequence. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be ineffective. And when you're talking about ineffectiveness in markets, that's not just, like the cup sucks. It often means mass death. It often means persecution. So this is something that anarchism, if not entirely prevents, certainly mitigates enormously.
So can I just, as a thought experiment, say it was very easy to immigrate to another country, like where you could just move about from government to government.
Sure.
Would that alleviate most of the problems that you have towards the state, which is like people being free to choose which government they operate under? Wouldn't that essentially be?
Yeah.
So like, I'm trying to understand why governments aren't already the thing that's the goal of anarchism. The kind of collectives that emerge under anarchism, it seems to be what government.
You're equating two terms. Yeah. So there's something called like private governance, and there's government. So for example, if I go to Yaron's house and he has a rule, take off your shoes, become.
Again, and he's taking that point of, well, we're fine with private governance, which I think is going to throw a bit of a spanner in angry cops there. I think Michael Malice he understands the arguments perfectly well here. There's not really much to add here, because Malice is just correct on all of these points. And angry cops, he's the basic bitch arguments just aren't going to fly here.
Your house. If you want to really be kind of silly about it, you could say he's the governor. But it's really nonsensical to say that.
And do you think voting is aggressive and or immoral? It's certainly not aggressive to vote. Just writing something on a piece of paper isn't aggressive. Is it immoral? Not inherently immoral. If you're voting for Hitler, you've got a choice between Ron Paul and Hitler, and you go, yeah, I'm going to vote for Hitler. I think that's immoral. But really, I think the whole thing about voting is people really overestimate how important it is. It's really not much. Your single vote is not going to do anything of import. So you gotta really look at this selfishly and go, well, is it worth the opportunity cost? And if it is, if the opportunity cost is lower than what you expect to get from it, then even if it's just the pleasure of sticking it to the man, as it were, then yeah, go for it. But yeah, no, for the most part, probably not worth it. But if you do want to vote, Springtime of Nations, in their libertarian Leninism I believe it's part 2. They have a whole flow chart for how you should vote as a libertarian radical.
If you go to Macy's, right? If you want to return your sweater, Macy's rules are right up there. You have 7 days. If you don't have a receipt, you're going to get store credit. If you do have a receipt, you get a refund. So every organization, every bar, every nightclub, your house has rules of governance. It's often they're unspoken. This is unavoidable. No one in America, by law, has to pay a tip, but it's just customary. You go with the waiter, you give them 15, 20%, so on and so forth. Now, what anarchism does is it says, okay, security is something that is of crucial, essential human need. We all need to be safe in our property, safe in our purpose. The organization that by far is the biggest violator of this, and always has been, always will be, is the government. Why? Because it's a monopoly, because it has no accountability. And look at the rioting last year, right? If you have one agency, pretend it's not the government, pretend it's Apple. And Apple has in charge of security in this town. People are rioting, people are looting. And Apple says, yeah, we're not going to send people into work. And if you try to defend yourself, we're going to put you in jail as well. That's the problem of having a government monopoly. And that's something that anarchism solves for. So,
Indeed, yeah. He's hitting all the arguments perfectly. Angry cops, I don't think will be able to stand this debate. I think your own Brooks in slightly better position to be in such a debate, because he understands philosophy. Angry cops, I've seen no evidence that he understands philosophy at all. One hop for $3 Australian. Thank you very much. Sarwark said we should vote for Mustache Man. Indeed, if he's on the LP ticket, you got to vote for him. Party overall.
So, okay, but don't you, because you said no accountability, right. Don't you mean to say poor accountability?
No, I mean to say no accountability.
I mean, but isn't that the idea of democracies?
I'm not for democracy.
No, not for democracy, but like the system of governments that we have, there is a monopoly on violence, but there is at least in the ideal, but I think in practice as well, there's an accountability.
I know
you're a critic of the police force and all those kinds of things, but the military is accountable to the people.
I do not.
The police force is accountable to the people, perhaps imperfectly. You're saying not at all.
Not at all. And we've seen many examples of police officers doing horrific things on video, and they don't even lose their pension.
But there's a lot of amazing police officers.
Again, so Michael Mass has these examples in his head, and he'll probably have them, really ready for if it's going to be a debate about police abolition. That's, just saying, well, there's a few outliers. Michael Mass can very easily hit on these points. Like, no, it's because it's a monopoly. It's not outliers. It is generally what it does. Okay.
They're not.
No, they're not.
So you're saying by nature, police is like a fundamentally flawed system?
No, by nature, government, monopoly, and police is a fundamentally irredeemable system. We talk about private security. If I have a private security firm, you can have that under a government, and as a result of my private security, my person who I'm bodyguarding gets shot. That's going to be very bad for my company as compared to competing companies. However, when you have a government monopoly and I get people shot, what are you going to do?
So the problem is that all the examples are going to be within the context of an existing government. This is why I said the cell phone example and all these other examples of us being here. We're not in anarchy. That is absurd. We're under a particular system of law, and the system of law is...
Okay, so, does Jeroen Broek, does he think that if the US government was gone and these three were in a room, that they would just be trying to kill each other? Like, well, we need the government to stop violence, because men are just naturally brutish. Is this his view of man? It's a very low view of man from an objectivist.
Laws applies, and we know that a particular system of laws applies. So the problem is when you have...
there are many laws that we're not going to be enforced. That we're not.
Sure, we know that.
Violence related?
No, there are lots of laws that are not going to be enforced. Right, I
think that's an important point there, because you really don't know what enforcement mechanisms you're going to get from the government. You really don't know, and you don't even know all the laws. Zero people on planet Earth know all of the laws of the United States. Zero, not one of them. All right, because there's way too many. You don't have an objective system of laws at all. Now, I know your own's not for the United States of America, but this is what you get when you have a monopoly, where the monopolist just gets to come up with whatever laws he wants. Right? What is the monopolist beholden to?
That doesn't make this anarchy, because there are other laws out there. They could be enforced, which makes it an enormous. But look, there's a number of issues here. There's an issue of the role of force in
I got to clarify things, because I think you misunderstood what I said. I'm not saying that America is anarchist. What I'm saying is the three of us have an anarchist relationship between us because none of us have authority over the others. That's what I'm saying.
But that's a bad use of the word anarchy.
No, that's the correct use of the word anarchy.
It makes it meaningless. It makes it every time any people get together, they have an anarchistic relationship.
Yes.
No, we have a voluntary relationship.
That's what anarchism means. Voluntarism.
No, it doesn't. It's a political.
You want to get a dictionary out?
You're taking a word and it's accepted usage, and then you're saying, oh no, it means
selfishness.
Maybe, and we never finished that discussion. You're taking a word. We're taking a word.
It's still just so insane contrasting what your own says when it comes to anarchy versus literally anything else. It's like he goes brain dead. Yeah. All of the capitalist arguments just fly away the second this topic comes up with any sort of randroid. It's amazing.
That you're defining as and replacing it with voluntary. Now,
I'm not for anarchism or voluntarism.
But let's understand what voluntary means, right? So we, for example, go into stores and there's a certain relationship that we have with the store that we engage in certain voluntary transactions with that store. Now, I believe that works because there is a certain system of law that both the store and we have accepted that makes that possible. Now, if that didn't, there's certain people who would like to walk into the store and just take the stuff, right? So there is we might not, but there's certain people who might want to go into that store. There's a certain system of laws that regulates.
And then the question is, what what's the best way to deal with those people? But also, he kind of acknowledged the point there. He was like, well, we might not do that. Well, then it is possible to have a free society without a government, right? Without a state. That is possible. Because, again, those two, they might not be going into stores and looting. So there are rational people there. So if you have a rational community, you don't need the state to tell them what to do. So then the question is, how do you deal with the irrational? How do you deal with the natural outlaws? How do you deal with these people? Well, how do you deal with any other risk? Right? It's a risk. You're facing a risk from these people. How do you deal with other risks? You use insurance. Right? So you insure your property against these people. And that's how you protect it.
The relationship and it defines the property rights and then provides protection for the property rights. Now, you would like all that privatized. Yeah. That is, the store would have its police force.
It's wild how closed objectivists can make cogent philosophical arguments, but the moment politics comes up, they just completely disintegrate. What do you think is the mechanism here? What causes them to evade like this? Well, I think it's because Ayn Rand was wrong about statism. She was wrong in politics. She adopted a subtle collectivism here, and that infected the rest of her legal analyses with this one little collectivist poison pill that there's got to be a state. And so the closed objectivists, they don't want to disagree with Ayn Rand on these things. They really got to keep up. It's fine if they disagree on like one little nitty picky point here and there, where it's like, well, I disagree with her view of sex in this very like niche area. They can still keep their closed objectivist credentials if they do that. But boy, if they throw out something where she had, vociferous disputes with Murray Rothbard in her life, and she really heavily denounced this viewpoint, and they'd have to throw out an entire branch of philosophy that she gave them. That's a much harder pill to swallow. So I think this old guard of objectivists, they really just aren't willing to do that. That, as far as I hear, sort of the newer, younger objectivists are quite freely throwing away a whole lot of what Ayn Rand said. So, yeah, I think there's the future is definitely far more positive.
And that would be privatized. Now, I don't believe that force can be privatized. And the many reasons
shouldn't.
I don't think it can. And I don't think I think it's
an interesting distinction.
I don't think it can, because I think that it's an unstable equilibrium. Right? I don't think competing police forces can work. At the end, the police force with the biggest gun always wins and always takes over.
That's not true.
And becomes
Look at Vietnam, look at Iran, and Iraq.
Boom. Yeah, he's hitting all these examples. Look at Vietnam, look at Iraq, look at Iran. He's got all these examples. That the biggest gun doesn't win. Jeroen Broek's going to have some sort of philosophical argument for why he thinks the biggest gun will always win, which, again, counterexamples are a valid thing in philosophy. But I don't even think angry cops will have any sort of philosophical argument for why that would be the case. If Michael Malice brings these counterexamples, angry cops, I reckon, will probably just kind of flounder.
Excuse me. We had the bigger guns. We didn't win. Look at Afghanistan.
We didn't win partially because none of that is an example of anarchy.
No, but you just said the guy with the biggest gun's going to win.
Yeah, the guy with the biggest gun.
We didn't win in Vietnam. We had the bigger guns.
But again, you're taking it outside of context. That was a context in which countries are fighting, not a context in which there is no country.
Okay, let's suppose you, Yaron, have a rocket launcher.
Yes.
And there's 100 people with handguns. How are you going to win? You have the biggest gun.
Oh, believe me, I could win.
With one rocket.
What? One rocket launcher versus 100 guys with handguns? Oh, believe me, I could win. Like, no, he ain't winning.
Launcher against 100 people?
Yeah, well, it depends how many rockets have in the rocket launcher and whether I'm willing to use them. But so now it's democracy because there are more of them that they win. Look, any one of these scenarios.
I'm confused, Malice. Like, he's just like looking around like, do you believe this? Like, what are you talking about here? Man says they're also much older, and many of them had a personal relationship with Rand. So there's an emotional element here as well. Yeah. Of course, like, the overall sort of attitude, it comes from, Ayn Rand was so right about so many things that you just kind of get in the habit of agreeing with her. It's like, even if you kind of, you don't quite get what she's saying, it's like, well, she's probably right about this actually, because she'd be right about so many other things. You get into this habit. Of course, yeah, that's just how it is sometimes. But I really don't think that this old guard of the objectivist movement is going to be able to maintain the orthodox objectivism for very long at all. They they were able to do it in Christianity with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was able to maintain like this single viewpoint for, well, like millennia, until the Protestant Reformation came about, like a very, very long time. Well, not millennia, of course, not multiple millennia, but you get my point. Very, very long time. Because, they could literally go in and say, hey, you're no longer, they could excommunicate you and prosecute you with the force of the law. So they were able to maintain that for a long, long, long time. But the Orthodox objectivists, they really don't have that option available to them. It's a whole movement surrounding the idea of you gotta think freely. You gotta be really, rational here. You gotta think for yourself. They're not going to be able to maintain. I think by the next generation of objectivists, this closed objectivism is going to be basically dead in the water. I really don't think that it can stand for a whole lot longer. All of these younger objectivists you talk to, like, it's not even like younger. That's perhaps not even the right word. I mean, I'll go and talk to Michael Leibowitz about anarchism, right? He'll have me on his show talking about anarchism. I can talk to Jim Valiant about anarchism. He'll listen to me about anarchism, like, versus Jeroen Broek, where it's like, this is not a debatable topic. This is not debatable. The tides are turning here. The tides really are turning. I don't think the ARI types are really appreciating just how much the tides are turning.
All it does. So let's go back to the store. So
this is fascinating, by the way. I'm really enjoying this. I just want to say that this is great because I am enjoying the pain,
and I'm also enjoying the comments that are going to happen.
The comments are going to be overwhelmingly on your side.
I don't think so.
People
I don't think so.
No, I think the anarchy position is completely dishonest.
I'm a modern day. What's his name? What's the guy who was defending communism?
Oh, Richard Wolff.
I'm a modern day Richard Wolff.
There's a sense in which I think anarchists are evading reality in the same sense. So we've got the.
Do you think I'm dishonest or delusional? Calling someone dishonest is a really.
That's true. I think you're delusional.
I think you're delusional, and I'm going to give you the benefit without being delusional.
Okay.
And
that's fair.
We all love each other.
And as I said, and as I said on the show, on the previous interview, I said only smart people can be anarchists because it requires a certain level of abstraction of being divorced from reality that is hard for people who are actually connected to reality.
He makes a good point because I always talk about this with people on social media, and they talk about a lot of people who buy into the corporate media narrative and how they're dumb. I go, it's easier to train smart people than dumb people. It's easier to convince smart people of the systemic that's divorced from reality. Somebody's dumb.
I don't have to deal with it with the concrete that actually happened. This is an example I gave debating another anarchist. So
who was it? She must have sucked.
The thing is that objectivism is just really full of really smart people. They cannot stand because they just see through it. Yeah, indeed.
They were Hoppe fans.
Oh, okay,
Hoppe fans, not one of my least, like, the people I like the least in the world out there.
You like them better than the communists, don't you?
Barely.
Oh, come on. Seriously?
Yes, because I think it leads to the same place. I really do. I think it leads to gulags.
Fine.
I think anarchy leads to gulags. And I think Hoppe's view of anarchy definitely leads to gulags.
I'll grant you just for the sake of argument.
Hoppe's view of anarchy leads to gulag. I mean, no. Surely your own should appreciate the Hoppian form of anarchy more than other types, because I mean, in Hoppe's view, there should be like these restrictive covenants over specific communities, so that they can have the same rules over a given community. So you don't have a bunch of different rules in different houses and everything. He should appreciate that more than just basic level anarchism. He should appreciate that more. Right?
That it leads to gulags. Yeah. However, surely you concede that they are against gulags, whereas the communists have no problem with it. And that's a big...
I think some do. I'm not sure. I'm not sure people like Hoppe do, because if you read...
He thinks Hoppe isn't against gulags. Like, where's he getting this from? If you read
some of his stuff, one wonders.
Some of his stuff, one wonders. If you just read some of his stuff, one wonders whether just some of his stuff. We don't have to go into specifics here. Just some of his stuff. Man Sharma, for 40 rupees. Thank you very much. Bro, did you talk to Jim Valiant? Tell us more. I mean, I've talked to him like in DMs and stuff, but not like publicly or anything, not like on a stream or anything. It's like, I believe I've spoken to him on a Twitter space before, actually. This is just one wonders if they read some of Hoppe's stuff, private production of defense. Yeah, I forgot that actually there was a chapter in there where he talks about how we need Stalin to implement a bunch of gulags. Yeah, I forgot about that chapter. Like, what specifically are you referring to here, Jeroen Broek? What are you specifically referring to in Hoppe, which is in favor of gulags? I've read, I would bet, more Hoppe than Jeroen Broek has read. I've never seen a single sentence from him where he's encouraged to support gulags even slightly. He's very much against government, right? He's against the government. Is he talking about like democracy, the god that failed? Because he's against democracy, must therefore be for gulags. But I mean, communism, the communists, they love democracy. We're gonna have a dictatorship of the proletariat. Really listen to the voices of the people. Now that's their viewpoint. Hoppe is saying that, hey, democracy, it leads to this like communist type of thinking, right? And if you have a monarch, you tend to get less infringement of private property rights. So if Jeroen could show that in fact under democracy you tend to have less infringement of property rights, then Hoppe would agree. Hoppe would switch his viewpoint, because it's all about the property rights for Hoppe. He says this explicitly in the start of the book. He's like, hey, I'm not endorsing monarchy here. I'm just saying, I'm an anarchist. I believe in the non-aggression principle. I'm saying that monarchy tends to be having less violations of rights than democracy. Like that's the whole thesis. The thesis falls if that claim is false.
Right. But once monarchies and he wants.
No, he said monarchies are preferable to democracy, which is true.
No, it's not. Oh God. I mean, one of the problems with anarchists is
one judge. That's the monarchy.
One of the problems. Yeah, one judge.
Indeed. So does Jeroen want everybody to vote over what happens with Rearden Metal? Would that be his ideal system? Well, let's just all vote. Let's vote on what happens with Rearden Metal. No, he wants Hank Rearden to decide what happens. Right? Right?
One authority. This is why that's why I think authority.
So you're authoritarian. So Yaron Brooks is Hoppian.
No, I don't want one judge. I don't want an arbitrary judge. I want an objective judge.
There's an essay by John Hassness, I think his name, I'm going to bungle it. It's going to be in my upcoming book on anarchism, and he just discusses, and it's a very long, complicated technical issue, that the idea of objective law is incoherent.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why we disagree so much.
Yeah.
Because
well, I disagree that the idea of objective. I disagree with that. I think there is such a thing as an objective law, namely natural law theory. I'm not entirely sure what Malice is meaning by objective law. Maybe he's meaning this thing of making the law objective, or maybe he's taking more of a Friedmanite stance. I really don't know. Again, I don't know. I think Michael Malice just calls himself an anarchist. I don't know if he's specifically an anarcho-capitalist or anything, or Rothbarian or whatever. I don't know what specifically he's going on into there.
Because I think objective law is the only coherent system.
Do you disagree that we, in effect, have competing systems of law under America? Meaning there's different ideologies. You have the Sotomayor ideology versus the Scalia ideology, and that effectively, and the point being, when you and I file a lawsuit, it completely depends on who the judge is.
Yes, and in theory, I don't think the system works this way, but in theory, the way the system would work is that on new issues, there's some competition. Nice to meet you. Syria wasn't talking to you. Technology.
Capitalism.
So in theory, the system works, and this works, I think, with competing states, but also with competing legal views, particularly on a new issue. There's some, this is how common law works, right? There's some evolution of it, and at some point, that gets codified into the law, and it gets objectified in that sense. That is, there's
gets objectified, but like, what standards are they using to come to the conclusion on this new issue if the law isn't objective yet on that matter? They're not using legal standards. They're not using jurisprudence. What are they using? Just whim? They just decided it to be that way? Like, this is a very shaky foundation here.
some conclusion that people come to. This is the role, in theory, of a legislature, and the legislature would be nice.
Just some conclusion that people come to, and this is the role of the legislator. Just some conclusion that they come to, and the legislature just declares it, and then that's how you make the law objective. Yeah, once again, this floating abstraction of the objective judge. Yeah, it's what does he mean by this? Somebody who can make things objective. Who is the objective person in ethics? Who is the final authority on ethics? Ayn Rand. Malice is mostly a Rothbardian, but he does believe in a all black flags are cool kind of anarchism. Okay, well, there you go.
If it was composed of people who had some idea of legal philosophy,
sure,
and it gets codified, and when because
so it had some idea of legal philosophy. So is there a natural law? Is there a natural law which you can study with philosophy? Maybe.
These things are complex, and at some point it goes through all the arguments, and then a certain truth emerges, or a certain truth is identified, and that's what gets encoded in law. That's what the purpose of legislatures. Now, if you have competing mechanisms that don't converge on one authority, because there's no one authority, there are multiple authorities. That is, in a sense, there are multiple governments or multiple systems.
But then if they're just converging on this one authority, what if this one authority disagrees with the philosophy of law, with the actual law as it exists out in nature? What if that one authority disagrees with that? Well, they've got to converge on this one authority, don't they? Well, are they still converging on the one authority? So then, what happens there? It's just back to fiat.
systems of enforcement, right? Then you get not just something emerging out of it. What you get is competing legal systems that now have competing mechanisms of enforcement, competing police forces, competing militaries, however we want to define it. And now there's no mechanism to resolve that. Now, yes, we could negotiate and there's goodwill and so on, right?
Yeah, there you go.
No, but now we're talking about the law, what each position views as true and right, right? And it might involve, for example, the fact that the legal system has come to the conclusion that it's okay for children to have sex with adults, and this legal system thinks that is evil and wrong, right? And something has happened, right, between the two, right? How do you resolve that conflict?
So yeah, again, you need the correct philosophy. If the philosophy of the day is freedom loving, then you won't get these groups which come to the conclusion that it's fine to rape children. It doesn't happen. If people don't think that, then who the hell's going to enforce that? Right? They're going to be pariahs. They're going to be hunted down. Right? Like, this is, again, philosophy of the day, the philosophical theory of history. Like, your own Brooke should know about this from Leonard Peikoff. I imagine he probably does know about it in other contexts, but it just goes out of the brain when it comes to anarchism. It just goes out of the brain.
There's no solution. If this adult wants to have sex with this child, this legal system thinks it's okay. That legal system thinks the only way to resolve that system is through one system imposing itself on the other. An example of countries is exactly that. When you had monarchies, when you had little states all over the place.
Yeah, I believe in a single objective legal system, which should be imposed on all others. That doesn't mean statism, though.
The way any kind of dispute was resolved when there were issues of territorial disputes or issues of marriage or issues of different legal interpretations was war.
No, it wasn't marriage. A lot of times people would marry a princess from another country.
Sure, forced marriages, which was not very pleasant.
I'd rather sacrifice one princess than a
No, I don't want to sacrifice anybody. And in addition, I don't want to sacrifice the royals. And in addition, well, I don't want royals.
Well, that's what sacrifice
royals are pretty disgusting. And then on top of that, look, those periods in history are filled with violence. Much more violence than we have today. Much more bloody than they are today. Far less freedom than we have today.
Are you comparing this to the 20th century?
Yes, I'm comparing a monarchy, right? You said that's preferable to democracy,
yes,
right? I'm comparing.
I'm saying Hoppe said that. I'm not saying I'm saying that.
Oh, I thought you.
To some extent, but I'm not going to deny that.
Hoppe said that, and I think it's ridiculous. These kings and queens were fighting constantly. I mean, the wars back then were violent in a way that,
unlike now.
No, much more violent than now. If you look at the actual,
much more violent than now. Well, like the most bloody wars I know of were between like the European powers in the 20th century, when the monarchies had been abolished. Right? Those were super bloody. I'm not a historian or anything, but I really don't think he's correct. I mean, maybe Hoppe is wrong about that, but I've definitely heard historical analyses where it was generally a whole lot less bloody. And it's like, I could definitely believe that given how many people the communists killed. The communists killed scores of people. Like, just unbelievable numbers of people were killed by the communists. Like, I find it hard to believe that it was anything like that back in the days of monarchy. I very much find that hard. That's a very high burden, historical burden, to try and prove that. Obviously, he doesn't have like documents with him right now where he can bring it up in the debate, but that's a very high burden to try and prove.
Percentage of people killed in war. If you look at the percentage of people, and not just that, you can look at other stats. The percentage of people killed in war back then were far greater than the percentage of people even during World War II and World War I. So anarchy, and David Friedman loves to.
The percent of people killed. I mean, this is going to depend on like, well, who's actually part of the war? How are we tabulating this? Because let's look at the Vietnam War. No monarchies involved there. No monarchies there. In the Vietnam War, take either Cambodia or Laos, two countries the U.S. was not at war with. Take either of them. Take your pick, right? And in that country, more yield of munitions, like, they talk about this as a 5-ton bomb or whatever. More yield of munitions was dropped in that country, a country the US was not at war with, by the US. The US dropped more munitions than every single bomb, including the 2 nukes, that was ever used in World War II. Like, I find it very hard to believe that medieval wars were even close to as destructive as that.
Quote the sagas of Iceland about how wonderful the anarchy, and I mean, it's funny because a lot of people never read the sagas. It's worth reading. The sagas of the Iceland are filled with violence, constant violence, constantly people.
It's again like this is the same argument he was making in one of the other streams where I was going over, where it's like, okay, what survives? In terms of like literature, what survives? Well, it's not going to be the boring shit that survives. You're not going to write a fucking saga about today I went down to the farm and I milked my goat. It's like, whoa, great fucking story there, Jim. You should write a book about that. Like, what survived from the caveman era? What recordings do we have from cavemen? Well, it's a whole lot of hunting. right? We see a whole lot of depictions of them hunting. Whoa, exciting, right? Not so exciting is Grug picking some twigs out of his toes. Right? That's not very exciting. So that doesn't survive, even though I'm sure plenty of that happened. The Battle of Stalingrad alone is probably more bloody than any medieval battle. A Babylon worth of people died. 2 million casualties in one battle. Yeah, well, to be fair to Yaron, he's making like a more per capita claim. But still, I'm very dubious about that per capita claim, given some of the horrors which have happened in the 20th century wars. Like, it's unbelievable amount of death.
Killing each other over, I stole your chickens and you slept with.
Like it's so much death that like the death tolls just the estimates are like a couple million deaths on either side. That's how big the error bars are because of how huge the amount of death is. Like it's an unfathomable amount of death. So I'm really dubious about this claim. What is your opinion on military logistics? Would the defense firm use rations and command the frontline economy? I mean, I don't know what the best way to run an army is, but the market can find that out. So if ration's the best way to do it, then great. If it would be rather like some sort of payment package or whatever, I don't know. But the market can figure it out. And that's kind of the point, that you can't centrally plan these things. If it's a market, then it's going to be better. And the front lines. Well, you wouldn't really get many front lines in some sort of anarchist society, because you wouldn't really get wars happening.
With my wife and
when is the debate? Angry Cops versus Michael Malice. I believe it's this Sunday. We've played so much Beyond All Reason, and yet you still can't centrally plan the war economy of Ancapistan. Yeah, indeed. But I was actually watching a Beyond All Reason video a while ago, and I noticed one of the people in the video was Socialism Done Left. So it is it's a very central planary game, I guess.
The only way to resolve disputes was violence. There was no authority. There was no mechanism to resolve these disputes. There was a council, but the council couldn't enforce anything. So in the end of the day, we just resolved the violence.
This is utterly ahistorical. He's talking about Iceland here, right? Where there was no way to resolve disputes. So it just went into violence. Like, no. This is a period in Iceland's history where they were so interested in arbitration that if there was a ghost haunting your house, you take the ghost to arbitration to get him kicked out. That's how you deal with ghost hauntings. Like, and I'm supposed to accept that, well, based on the sagas, there's so much violence. Like, isn't there a bit of a selection bias here? If we're looking at, like, the stories, like, what are the famous stories about Iceland's history? Obviously, you're going to focus on the exciting stuff. Well, people, like, 500 years from now, look at, like, Marvel movies. It's like, Jesus Christ, New York was getting blown up every other week. So violent. My biggest current question is, what's the sell for ANCAP or even libertarian philosophy for people who feel reliant on state power for resources? How do we show that people will help them create value without needing to take it from others? Well, the first point would be that your desire, your need, isn't a claim against my life, right? It's just the standard objectivist argument against altruism. So you being reliant on state power for resources, I mean, get a job, be productive, right? That would be the first level of it. And under some sort of anarchism, if people were anarchists, and they didn't have the state power ruling over them, then you get a tendency towards increased productivity. You get a tendency towards civilization.
And this is legalized because there is no mechanism by which to make the violence illegal. So all anarchy is legalized violence, constrained up, for a while, and up until people stop that constraint by, arrangements between the security organizations. Yeah. But the security organizations have us by the balls, to put it figuratively, right? They really do.
Sure. Unlike the state?
Oh, the state today has it, but I would much rather live in this state. Much rather live in many more authoritarian states than this, than a place where there's constant violence.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'm enjoying this.
Everything he said is wrong.
Okay, yes.
First of all, the idea of competing legal systems is inevitable. Because what Rand talked about is what she wanted was, and this is really kind of out of character with her broader ideology, is, I think this was her term, and I'm not saying this to make fun of you, when she has a judge and he's looking at the information, she wants him to be basically, I think she used the word robot, someone without any ideology, that they're just looking at the facts, they're not bringing their kind of worldview to it.
I take it as a compliment.
You are welcome. I think that given otherwise, her correct view that ideology, calling something ideology is just a slur for someone's philosophy. That someone, especially someone as erudite, educated, and informed as a judge, has to, and in fact should, bring their ideology to their work is in one sense a little contradiction in her view. Number one. Number two is we have right.
That's a very good point, but I don't think this leads to competing legal systems. I'm not sure exactly what he's getting at here. If he's getting at the Friedmanite point, then it's a very poor point. But maybe he's just meaning more, well, you know, the different covenants can bind different people, and you know, people can have different rules and whatnot. Yes, it's very true that like philosophy, who needs it? Everybody has a philosophy. We just want the philosophy to be correct. We want good, true philosophy at the forefront. And if you have that, then you don't have constant violence, right?
Right now, the DA in San Francisco, I forget his name. He's the son of literal terrorists, communist terrorists, and he has made the decree unilaterally that if you shoplift for less than, I forget, $200, we're not prosecuting.
Yeah, I know it.
You know this, right. So now you and I, and Lex, I'm sure probably agree that his ideology is abhorrent. That this doesn't help poor people, it doesn't help shop owners. It creates a culture, an area where it's just deleterious to human life. However, he has, in one sense, given that he is a state operative, a legitimate worldview.
Can I ask you just a quick question?
Sure.
Why couldn't a security force in a particular context say, yeah, if you take stuff from that store, we're not going to having any problem with that.
I agree.
And the thing is, what would stop that is having the correct philosophy. Again, this is all philosophy of history stuff. If you have the correct philosophy in place, if people are freedom loving, then one guy saying, hear ye, I decree that people are allowed to steal now, it won't matter. I could literally open up my front window and say, I declare to the world that stealing is now legal. Nothing would change, all right? Me just saying it doesn't change anything about whether people are okay with stealing.
I agree with you. That's very fair. That's a very legitimate question. The point is, in the context that I'm talking about, that firm is like, wait a minute, I'm hiring you for security. You're saying we're not going to provide security. Why am I writing you a check? And we have examples of this in real life. If I get into a car accident with you, right? You have your car insurance, I have my car insurance. If your car insurance had their druthers, they wouldn't pay me 1 penny. If my car insurance didn't have their druthers, they wouldn't pay you 1 penny. We already have. You were saying earlier that we need to have one kind of umbrella mechanism of use. There are already more cases than you can count where there's private arbitration. Now, the argument is the private arbitration only works because they have recourse to the government. But my point is there's many examples where even though that recourse is theoretically possible, it's not a realistic concern, specifically because they know that if you have recourse to the state, you have no concept of what that outcome is going to look like, except knowing it's going to be exorbitant, it's going to be time consuming.
We can't use the state, right? I mean,
That's very true, right? That they can't appeal to, well, there is ultimately this final arbiter, because the whole reason why people go to private arbitration is they desperately do not want to go to the state. That would be, they will do anything in their power to avoid going to state courts. Absolutely anything. This is why private arbitration is so successful. So there are real examples of all of these things that Michael Malice is talking about already existing in reality. And again, bringing it back to Angry Cops, I don't think Angry Cops is going to have any even slightly good arguments against it. I mean, you know, obviously, Yaron Brook is mostly capitalist in his thinking. So they don't have to necessarily go through it all. Is Angry Cops a capitalist? It doesn't sound like it. He was advocating like democracy before in the other video. So then the question would be, you know, Michael Malice can just kind of dog walk him even on just capitalist arguments. He can just bring these capitalist arguments forward. And will Angry Cops have a good response to any of them? I don't think so.
critical as the state as it is right now, maybe not as critical as yours, not as critical as yours, but I'm quite critical of the state as it is right now. But let's say we got into a traffic accident and you have a Rolls Royce, and I destroyed your Rolls Royce, and my insurance company now owes your insurance company a lot of money. And let's imagine it's a lot of money just for the sake.
And you're clearly guilty.
Yeah, clearly guilty. And my insurance company looks at the books and it goes, I don't want to pay this.
Sure.
And you know what? I've got bigger guns than his insurance company.
Sure.
And I'm just going to take over their insurance company. And hostile takeover takes on a whole new meaning.
Well, again, he's resting this on the argument that if you have the bigger guns, you necessarily win. Like, if they're afraid of paying for like a Rolls Royce, geez Louise, wait until you see how expensive war is. War, that's going to be way more expensive than paying off a fucking Rolls Royce. Like, my God. And are you going to win this war? Probably not, right? Even if you have the bigger guns, you might not even win, right? It is so unpredictable. And what if you start attacking this insurance agency, but they're insured with somebody else, and they've got contracts with all these other people, and then suddenly you're attacking everybody, and then you're in a really sticky situation. War is very unpredictable, very expensive. You don't expect people to just go, well, let's just have a bit of fun, go for a bit of a war, right? That doesn't happen.
When I can muster guns on my behalf, then in a hostile takeover in a capitalist context, that to me is what happens. That to me is inevitably what happens, and I think this is where the delusion comes in. The
inevitable again. It's This is his favorite word. This is inevitable. It'll necessarily happen. Why? You haven't established that yet, Yaron. Will that necessarily happen in Galt's Gulch? You know, if Ayn Rand had kept writing another chapter about life in Galt's Gulch, would you see suddenly John Galt gets out his gun and starts shooting at Judge Narragansett? Would that have occurred? Clearly not, right? So again, it's not necessarily true. Okay, your own favorite word, never uses it right.
The idea that everything that when big money is involved and big and power is involved, remember again, the same kind of politicians who today get into politics are likely to want to run some of these security agencies because they'll have a lot of power over people. So same kind of maybe sociopaths. I don't
think it's the same skill set, but that's a separate issue.
I think it very much is. But
you think the people in Washington the same as CEOs psychologically and skill set wise?
Well, today's CEOs, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
I think that's what's rewarded for CEOs, somebody who could get along with government. Okay. And I think the kind of CEO who is going to run a security company, which is not just about business, it's about the use of force, it's about control, it's about negotiation with other entities that are using force, diplomacy. Then and we should get back to objective law because I think it's essential to this whole argument. I think all you get into is security agencies fighting security agencies, and again, the biggest gun. And I don't mean here the guy who has the biggest literal gun, the rocket launcher versus the guns.
I got excited.
By the biggest gun. Yeah. The party that has the more physical force, however that is mustered either by numbers or by weapons, is going to dominate.
The person who has the more physical force is going to dominate. Not they might dominate. Is going to. No, not true. The United States has more physical force than any country on earth. They have more physical force than China. Why is the United States not currently dominating China? Why is that the case? Russia has more physical force than Ukraine. Why has Ukraine not become part of Russia yet? Right? More physical force doesn't mean you necessarily win. Right? If I'm like Waco siege, the police, they weren't just instantly, just walking on in. It's like, hey, we got more guns. So then they're just like, oh, please. There's such a thing as being in like a defensive situation, being in like a guerrilla combat situation. If right now every single person in Appalachia with all their guns and everything, if all of them decided to secede from the U.S. government and they did it, good fucking luck retaking that. You're not gonna, right? It ain't happening, right? What are you gonna march up these mountains where you don't know the terrain, and there could be like some hillbilly in a hut like 500 yards away with a long gun trained on your forehead? Like, good fucking luck taking that back. We saw this with Vietnam again. We saw this with Vietnam. The United States government, way more munitions and guns and everything than the North Vietnamese. They lost. They lost that war, right? And sometimes the objectivists, they like to bring this point where it's like, well, it's because they were kind of a paper tiger. They were holding back. They didn't do everything they could have done, and then they could have won if they did more. And then again, I just bring it back to the point of either Cambodia or Laos, pick one. In that country, they dropped more tonnage of munitions than the entirety of World War II, including the atom bombs. Right? That is not holding back. They're not being a paper tiger there. It's just not the case that having more physical force means you necessarily win, right? Your own favorite word. It's not the case that you necessarily win if you have more force.
And will take over everybody else. Now, one of the things that's common in a market is takeovers. It's consolidation. And here, the consolidation can happen through force, and you can roll other security companies, and that's exactly what will happen until you dominate the particular geographic area.
Okay, so let me explain.
Again, that's exactly what will happen. Again, he loves using these terms. Why is that exactly what will happen? Why is that necessarily the case? Can you demonstrate this? Give some syllogism or something. Just show why this is necessary.
And why I disagree with that. You were just saying, and I agree correctly, I agree with you, that listen, if I have access to the bigger gun, why am I paying you or whoever's paying whoever? I'm just going to use force and not pay them. We have that right now. It's called lobbying. Yeah. So instead of me, and I'm sure in your example you weren't being literal, instead of the insurance company literally having the army, they could be like, hey, let me call Corruptco, the mafia. I agree. Yeah, go out and take them out. Yeah. By having the federal government, as you know, and certainly I'm not a fan of, takes more through asset forfeiture than burglaries combined. What asset forfeiture is, people don't even understand this. This is something crazy which are on. It's as opposed to
again. So Michael Malice knows all of these examples. He's talking about asset forfeiture now. That came up in the case of Angry Cops. I didn't know that was actually more than all robberies combined, but there you go. Malice has the stats just off the top of his head, and he's going to have these really drilled in here for his debate, I believe, on Sunday. Angry Cops. Yeah, I'm sticking to my prediction. I think this is going to be total destruction. I think Malice is going to utterly destroy Angry Cops here. I don't think it's going to be close. Angry Cops is going to get stomped. They need to read Hoppe or Rothbard in order to prepare for this debate. Yeah, really what Angry Cops needed to do to prepare for this debate, what he should do at this point is spend the remainder of this week trying to invent a time machine so he can go back a few months and then start studying philosophy. Then he might be prepared. Otherwise, ain't gonna work. Again, this is the thumbnail. Not gonna work, right? Really, Malice, at least based on this performance in this debate right here, on the exact same topic, Malice is absolutely crushing. He's hitting all the right points. And Jeroen Broek is a much more philosophically inclined person. Jeroen Broek knows so much more about philosophy than I was seeing from Angry Cops in his prep. So I think Angry Cops is absolutely going to lose very, very badly.
To me, as opposed as I am, which is I'm a cop. I go to your house. I think you haven't been charged or
is this going to make it to YouTube so we can come back to it later? Yes, I stream both to Twitch and to YouTube at the same time, so you'll be able to, it automatically keeps the VODs that way.
convicted of anything. I have evidence.
It's usually in a car.
Yeah. Well, no, it's like drug deals. Okay, I go to your house, you're a drug dealer. I say, and you can understand the reasoning, well, if someone is getting profit through illegal mechanisms, their profit isn't really their property and they shouldn't be rewarded that profit. So basically, I go to your house, you're a drug dealer, I seize all your property. Mm-hmm. You don't really have recourse, even though you haven't been through I'm just explaining to the audience, through due process and SOL. That combined, for people who don't know, is more than the total amount of burglaries in America. It's a huge and what happens is the police department, which seizes your car, auctions it, seizes your house, auctions it, it's a great way to line their pockets. This is a huge incentive. It's horrible. It's a huge incentive for police departments to do this because it's like, look, this guy's a crook. Maybe he's not a drug dealer, but he's clearly a pimp. Let me just take all his stuff and it's going to go to the community.
Well, and the rationale originally was, if I try him, in the meantime, he'll take that money and funnel it somewhere else and hide it, and I'll never be able to get access to it. And it was passed in the 1970s under the original seizure laws, were kind of RICO Act, going after the mafia. And one of the reasons I despise Giuliani as much as I do, and there's very few politicians out there that I despise more, is because he was the first guy to use RICO on financiers. Yeah. And so it wasn't even a drug deal. It was you accused of a financial fraud. Not you weren't shown to be.
And again, you haven't been shown to be guilty of these crimes. This is what happens when you have a monopolist who not only enforces the law, but also they're a monopolist on coming up with what the law is. How does Jeroen Broek even show this to be a violation of rights in the first place? He has to appeal to some sort of naturalistic theory of rights, but then his whole rationale falls.
To be guilty, accused.
Yeah.
All your assets basically were forfeited.
Innocent until proven guilty.
If you were managing money, you were done.
So you're saying this kind of stuff naturally merges with the state.
Hold on. So my point is, what are presented as the strongest criticisms of anarchism are inevitably descriptions of status quo. What you're describing is already the event. I am a big insurance company. I don't want to pay you. I call Washington. Either I pay you and Washington gives me a subsidy. So what you're describing is an inevitable aspect of having a government.
So what I'm describing is the inevitable evolution of anarchy into a government. I just think that the
markets don't consolidate into monopoly. That's a leftist propaganda myth.
Not markets.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Malice knows all the talking points. Angry Cops does not.
You have substitute products, but this is the problem. The problem is force has no substitute. That is, force is not a product you can have. So this is my fundamental.
What? Force has no substitute. In terms of substitute products, yes, it does. I could go for my neighbor for support in terms of if somebody's burgling me, or I could go to the other neighbor, or I could hire a firm. A private police car to sit outside, or plenty of different. Or I could have weapons myself, right? There are all sorts of things I could do, right? Just in the same way that I could go to Starbucks, or I could go to some other coffee shop, or I could go to, I have substitutes. There are market substitutes.
Issue about turning competing police forces. Force is not a product. Force is not a service. It's not a service, and it's not a product.
Security is not a service.
No. Well, security in the context of a legal system is, but this.
Well, yeah, again, in the context of a legal system, but Jeroen has to have some sort of naturalistic understanding of law. He has to have a natural law theory to even identify what Giuliani was doing as a violation of rights. So then, security in the context of there being natural law. Yes, it is a service.
This is the point. The legal system, the laws, are not a service or product. They are a different type of human institution. Science is not a product or service. It's a different type of human institution. The different types of human institutions. Some are marketable. You can create markets in, some you cannot. Law is not a marketable system.
Can I ask a question quickly? Is there any other field other than law that you think you can't create markets?
Well, science. Science is not marketable. The science itself is not marketable.
Science is not marketable. The science itself. What does he mean by that? Because you can absolutely create markets in discovering scientific innovations. What does he mean by science is not marketable? What does he mean by that? I'm really... 'cause the basic interpretation that I'm having of that is just obviously wrong. Like, I mean, tell that to Atlas Shrugged. This is like what's his face? The bad guy, scientist guy in Atlas Shrugged. This is his idea. It's like, well, you can't have markets in science. That seems like there's no possible way that Jeroen Broek is saying that, right? Like, he's surely not that far down the river. But I don't know what the charitable interpretation of that is. That science itself is not marketable. Yes, it is. You can have markets in science. Yeah, Floyd Ferris, or not Ferris, the guy who was Ferris's boss, Stadler, that's his name. Yeah, this was Stadler's idea that you can have markets in. You need a state science institute because you have markets in science. Like, surely he's not saying that. Like, but I really don't understand what the charitable interpretation of that is. Because that would be, oof.
Sure. Science is true. And the same, I think, is in law. Law is not marketable. Law is the system that allows markets to happen, right? You need a system of law, whether it's private law in a particular narrow context or whether it's broader law. Law is the context in which markets arise. So one of the reasons we transact is we know that there's a certain contract between us, explicit or implicit, that is protected by a certain law, whether it's protected by private agency or the government, doesn't matter. But there's a certain contract that is protectable, right?
Theoretically.
Theoretically, yes. So law is the context in which markets arise. You don't create a market because there's nothing above it, in a sense. It is the context that allows markets to be created. Once you market it, markets fall apart.
Again, it's the question of what does law mean? Is it something natural or is it something created? Like, this is, if law is being respected, then yes, that's the situation under which you can have markets. But for law to be respected, that doesn't require a monopolist. Why does there have to be a monopolist for people to respect law? In Galt's Gulch, is there a monopolist? No, not really.
So hold on a second. Yeah, hold on. So you think?
My guess is he means you can't patent science. Okay, that is very, very funny. Yeah, because I suppose they think that patents and copyrights and all these things, they're just a part of the market. Yeah. So yeah, that's nonsense.
Think that law could be a market,
and it already is a market. And we see it, for example, eBay. If I am buying something from Yaron, I won't even know his name. I don't know. Maybe he's in another country. He screws me out of the money. I don't have access. I can't sue you. Like, or if I sue you in England, good luck with that. You're not going to argue that I'm going to sue you. What happens in this case, which has already been solved by the market, eBay and PayPal, which has access to your bank account, they act as the private arbiter. They're going to get it wrong a lot. Not even a question. Just like Yaron's not going to argue that the government right now gets it wrong a lot. That's not even a question. The point is, at the very least, I'm going to get my resolution faster, cheaper, and more effectively. So the issue with having any kind of government anything, and Yaron's not going to disagree with this, is at the very least, it's going to be expensive, inefficient, and cause conflict.
Yeah, but I think what it allows is
we don't even know what the Supreme Court's going to judge.
Again, you're moving us to today's environment, which I'm
moving us to reality.
Right? No, but reality doesn't have to be what it is. I mean,
that's the most anti-Rand quote.
No, in a sense.
That is a very funny way of putting that. Reality doesn't have to be what it is. Oh dear.
In a sense of the politics, the political reality.
I know, but the quote by itself is great.
I know. You'd love to.
He agrees with Donald Hoffman. As well.
Yeah, it turns out I agree with Hoffman.
He's an elf.
So it's where were we? So I believe that because we have a certain system of government, right, it allows for these private innovations to come about that facilitate certain issues in a much more efficient way than the government would deal with it. But it's only because we have a particular system that has defined property rights, that has a clear view of what property rights.
Again, this is all. Well, we need this monopoly to define property rights, to make it clear what property rights are. How about just fucking study philosophy, and then you can figure out what property rights are. All right, you can. Again, it's natural. It's natural. You don't need somebody to define these things. You don't need this in any other branch. Why is it suddenly in this one area of philosophy where you need somebody to define what these things, where you need somebody there to be the authority, to be the final authority on law? Again, who is the final authority on ethics? It ain't Ayn Rand. There ain't one, right? There is no final authority in ethics. There's no final authority in metaphysics. Why is there a final authority in law?
Rights up. It has a clear view of what a transaction means, or what contract law is, and eBay has a bunch of stuff that you sign, whether you read it or not.
Course.
All of that is defined first, and then there are massive innovations at the level of particular transactions, at the level of an eBay, that facilitate increased efficiency, and that's great. But the fact is, none of that gets developed. None of that gets created in a world in which I might be living under a different definition of property rights. eBay might be living under a separate definition of property rights. You might have a third definition of property rights, and there's no mechanism by which we can.
Well, I think Malice's point is that you don't know what the definition of property rights are in the United States right now, and yet eBay is able to do these things. Now, you don't know how the state will go on some verdict. It could be different one day than it is on the other. So, and yet eBay came about. So that's just a counterexample. So Jeroen's wrong that you need to have his perfect government for there to even be a concept of rights. Because with the government he rejects, which is the United States government, where it doesn't make any of these things objective by his standards, you can still get things like eBay. You can still get things like private arbitration. So the counterexample, I think, stands.
Can actually operationalize that because we all have a different system.
There is that. We already have that. Let's change the example I just used. What happens if a Chinese person who has different definition of property rights kills an American in Brazil?
Again, in a smaller community, what happens is lots of violence.
No, but I'm talking about right now. If a Chinese person has
right now, the only reason that it doesn't lead to violence is because people are afraid of even more violence, and it affects many people, large numbers of people who don't want to go to war. But if you have small in a state where the states were small. Right? In those little states, there was war all the time for exactly those reasons. Because the cost was lower, because it was more personal, because I knew maybe the person who was killed over there, and I went to my king and encouraged him to go to war.
You know why there was
violence
war?
is constant.
You know why there was war? Because there had been no Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
And good ideas lead to good societies, which leads to good people, which lead to good behavior, good interrelationships. So now that we have Ayn Rand.
There we go. He understands the philosophical theory of history. He understands this. And Angry Cops is pretty much the last nail. And he just hammered it into Angry Cop's coffin right there. Goodbye, Angry Cops. You are about to crumble very, very hard. Michael Malice does even half as well as he's doing here. Angry Cops is utterly boned.
Yes.
All this stuff in the past is irrelevant because if they studied her works, we would be. Rand was on Donahue again. You could watch the clip, and he asked her. He goes, "You're saying that if we were more selfish and acted more self-interest, there'd be less war, less Hitler?" And she said, "There wouldn't be any."
Right. Right. Well, if we were all selfish, there wouldn't be any Hitlers. Right.
But who do you regard as the overweening authority if I am buying a product from you as someone in England via eBay? Who's the governing authority?
The governing authority are the legal systems in England and the United States, which have to be synchronized.
Whoa, but no, Michael Malice, he's just kind of retreating down the flow here. But Michael Malice has already explained, like, well, no, because I'm not going to be able to sue you if you're over in England. Like, that's never going to fucking happen. And you know that's never going to happen. And yet, it gets resolved with eBay. Right? Their account gets banned. And I get my money back.
It's pretty well.
Right, but what I'm saying is
why eBay doesn't function in certain countries because there is no legal system.
My point is, why do those legal systems have to be a function specifically of geography, as opposed to why can't I sitting here? I could sit here. You're not. Let me finish my point. I can sit here and be a British diplomat, right? And as a British diplomat, I'm going to be treated differently under American law than you are as an American citizen as you are. Why can't you have that same process? Sure, we're geographically proximate, but I'm a citizen of this company and you're a citizen of that company. Why would that be different in your opinion?
If it's England and the United States, it's probably not going to matter that much, right? But if it's Iran and the United States, then the fact that we're sitting next to each other makes a huge difference.
Oh,
then again, it's right back to Michael Malice's point of the philosophical theory of history. Yeah, you have to have the right philosophy, the right public opinion in Halpa's terms.
That's the difference. And the fact is that, and I think would be the first to acknowledge this, and this is why she was so opposed to anarchy. It's not
why. It's because of Rothbard.
No, it has nothing to do with
nothing.
It has nothing to do with
nothing.
Nothing.
How do you know?
Nothing.
How would you know?
Because her argument against anarchy is an intellectual one, not a personality.
Can it be both?
Anyway, back to Iran.
No, it has nothing to do with Rothbard.
You don't know that. You're not a psychic or necromancer.
The only way we're going to resolve this is arm wrestling, right? It's through violence.
Arm wrestling is not violence.
Words of violence.
Words are violence.
Words of violence. Emotions of violence.
So wait,
he throws me off with this stuff. But that's the problem. He's very, very good. Not facts.
Are they going to debate one-on-one or on that group talk podcast? I don't really know. I haven't found any specific announcements about it. But the people in the comments, I believe, were saying that going to be moderated by like Timcast or whatever. So presumably it'll be one-on-one with like a gaggle of moderators. I don't know. So we shall see.
Truth. I mean, there's distortions and arbitrary statements because your statement about Rothbard is an arbitrary statement that has no cognitive standing, and therefore I can dismiss it. So I'm not doing like this because I want to. It has no cognitive status. The fact that she disliked Rothbard doesn't mean that everything he said she was going to dismiss because she disliked.
I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, it would not be impossible.
But there's no evidence.
I'll give you some evidence. It's human psychology. It is not impossible that if you hate some, what's his name? What's that guy's name?
Richard Wolff.
Right. Yeah. It's not impossible that if Richard Wolff said something that you would otherwise agree with, hold on, let me finish. You'd be dismissive or less likely to give him credit for it, being a human being. That's all I'm saying.
It's as silly as to say Rothbard came up with his theory of anarchy because he was pissed off at Ayn Rand and wanted to write something.
I don't know. Bring it down because bring it down so that he can speak too, and let's keep it because
I don't think I'm getting agitated.
No, you guys aren't. No.
Yeah.
No, bring it down, not in terms of give more pauses so Michael can insert himself. That's what I mean.
See, private governance.
What's the point of that?
Private governance. Look, it's private governance.
I'm trying to establish a geographic law of the land.
That's
I
not
don't
the point.
know. I do think that Michael's. I mean, that's interesting that you disagree with this. I do believe that psychology has an impact on ideas. And Ayn Rand, you don't think Ayn Rand had grudges that impacted the way she saw the world? I would like to think that.
I don't think any of her grudges entered into philosophical statements, at least not that I can tell. And I don't see, and given the centrality,
I mean, I don't. I don't think it really matters much, for at least in the context of this stream, whether Ayn Rand didn't like Rothbard and therefore she dismissed anarchism. I think I've gone over that plenty in my video, Anarcho-Capitalism Responding to the Critics.
But I say because
and I don't see why psychology would enter it. Now, maybe the tone in which she responded to an answer might have been motivated by that, something like. But given the amount of thought she gave to the role of government in human society and why government was needed and why you needed laws.
I think it's just very clear. Like, this was just one area where Ayn Rand had a collectivist poison pill, and that collectivist poison pill tore apart the rest of her philosophy from that point on. Right? It's very simple. I'm late, but is Zulu getting to debate your own? No. Not sure where you got that impression. This stream is about, before we were reviewing a debate prep that Angry Cops was having, because he's going to be debating Michael Malice. I wanted to see if Michael Malice is able to handle himself in debates, and thus far, very much so.
In order to be free, that freedom didn't precede the right. You needed the right hierarchy. I think that we could say that give it at least the respect that she might have been wrong, right? But she had a particular theory that rejected anarchy and that thought anarchy was wrong.
But hold on, I really resent, and I'm not saying you're doing this, the implication that if Rand was guided by her passions, that somehow is a criticism of her or lessens her. I think Rand was a very passionate person. Absolutely. I think she loved her husband enormously. She despised certain people enormously. Sure. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
She would change her philosophical position about something because she disliked somebody.
I agree, but what I'm saying...
Given the amount of thought she gave to that philosophical position.
All I'm saying is, it is possible that if...
I think we're basically not sure how much more they can go over. They seem to be digging down into this point quite heavily. So I think we can leave it off there. But thank you very much for everybody who came. Thank you especially to everybody who donated. Yeah, it was a great stream. Thank you all for stopping by. Hopefully it'll be good with Michael Malice and Mr. Angry Cops on Sunday, I believe. And we shall see if my prediction was right and if Michael Malice will completely dog walk him. Yeah, I'll see you. But I just keep rambling on because it always cuts me off early. So we'll see if this gets cut off as well.